Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, morning.
Morning, everybody.
Morning. How's it, Alex?
Morning, Basil.
Hundreds, man. Sorry, I didn't get back to you. Things are a bit rough and ready at the moment.
It's fine. We'll talk.
Lovely. Thanks for your time today and good luck.
Thank you.
Morning, everybody. We're just admitting more colleagues into the meeting. We'll be with you in a few minutes. Just a sound check to everybody joining. We will be with you in about 2 minutes' time. Still admitting people to the meeting. Good morning to all.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Charlotte.
Hello, Charlotte M. Fancy seeing you here.
Yeah, it's been a while, Basil. How are you? How's
Lovely.
everybody doing?
No, we're trying. In the face of adversity, we keep on going. Morning, Dr. Mike. Permission to refer to you as Dr. Mike because I see your signature is also saying Dr. Mike. Welcome.
Thanks, Basil. Yeah, indeed, you can refer me as such. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Basil. Morning, Harry, and everyone else. Looking forward to an interesting session. Thanks so much.
Morning, Kathy.
Thanks, Kathy.
Well, great seeing all the faces again. Good morning to everybody from the Transport Forum side. While we're still letting people into the meeting, let's quickly do some housekeeping. And, we're all used to Zoom by now, but let's just refresh our minds. People, please stay on mute while you're in the session. During the questions and answers session, we will give you opportunity to unmute yourself. And once you've been recognized, then you will have opportunity to, ask your question to the panelists. So we're not going to encourage questions and answers during the presentations. And so keep an eye on your inbox. Should something go wrong, then we will email you a link to rejoin the meeting. And then during the meeting, it's my job to mute people should you accidentally unmute yourself. But thank you very much for that. So you're welcome to make use of the chat room at the bottom of your screen. There's a chat room. You can greet each other there, share contact details. You also see the participants box. Click on the participants box and you're welcome to, mouse over your own name and rename yourself to, only the device name is showing or something like that. So you're most welcome to rename yourself. Ladies and gents, we proudly being hosted today by the South African Bus Operators Association. We're talking about cross-border challenges. It's the 19th of May, 2022. And obviously all of this is complementary because we've got valued sponsors making this possible for us. And we would like to give quickly recognition to our sponsors so that, that we can understand their offering and appreciate their support to the Transport Forum. So just to show you the first half of our program, our host Basil Governor will just now introduce us to the program and to the presenters. There's the brief, there's the second half of the program today. You can see at each half there's a questions and answers session where you will be given opportunity to ask questions. Exciting news is that we're going to do prize winning. So we're going to introduce the sponsors and the Transport Forum Alliances to you now. And after that, we're going to ask questions. And there are two of these nice rechargeable LED compact lights that you can win. So we're going to ask you some questions about our alliances and sponsors. And you're going to use the chat room should you answer the question correctly. The first person answering the question correctly will be the winner of the prize, and we will courier the prize to you. That we can obviously only do this for local people, and should you be an employee of the related company, then refrain from answering the question. But thank you very much for your kind support. So the Transport Forum is proud to have formal alliances with professional bodies in the industry. And we're going to start looking at SABOA. And this is our hosting organization today. And Basil, over to you to tell us a little bit more.
Thanks, Harry. SABOA, Southern African Bus Operators Association, long-standing and credible association that represents broadly the entire spectrum of the bus and coach industry in South Africa, a sprinkling of foreign membership and across all sectors. So there's no specific interest or alliance in terms of which sector we get involved with. Is expressly involved in shaping narrative, affecting the narratives, policies, and discussions around all things public transport related. It's a very trying and demanding time at the moment. So Saba's space and position is being tested around all quarters and all angles. But we have very active and excellent open relations with all stakeholders from all tiers of government and within the industry and the extended value chain. At this point, I think, for those of you that don't know, Sabawa normally holds an annual event encompassing a dinner, conference, and exhibition. And I just want to throw out there that this year, and after 3 years, we've aptly titled this event for 2022 is Bringing the Industry Together again, after 3 years in the same place and time. And we've collaborated with Harry and his team on Transport Forum. So the conference is being held alongside the Future Road and Auto Mechanica exhibition or expo, 7th to 10th of June. All our partners and members are involved with exhibiting. The Sabawa specific event on the 8th of the evening of the 8th encompasses a dinner, a gala dinner. And on the 9th, we have a conference, a one-day conference, slightly different format from the past where it ran over 2 days. Our conference program should be finalized by tomorrow, pending our erstwhile Minister of Transport's commitment to open or not, or his deputy. But we have some exciting speakers in the lineup, a good program being fleshed out, all of which will be available on the Transport Forum website, and you can use that to access and link it. For those of you that don't want to travel, it's capped at 150 delegates physical. The event will be live streamed or simulcast with the great expertise of Harry and his team. So it will be online as well, and you can register for that. So registration is essential, which will close around next week, Friday. Thanks, Harry. I think that's enough for me for now. I'll be talking most of the day today.
Thank you so much, Basil. Much appreciated. Looking forward to being chaired by yourself. And thank you very much for Sabawa's alliance and mentorship to the Transport Forum. Really appreciate that. Thank you, Basil. Ladies and gents, we also have the South African Association of Freight Forwarders. You can see already established in 1921, representing the freight forwarding industry. We have the South African Express Parcel Association, represented body, a voice of the express delivery industry in South Africa. We've got the African Rail Industry Association as a RIA, doing great work in reviving our rail networks in South Africa, third-party access to our rail network and so on. Very proud in having a RIA around. The Chartered Institute of Logistics, Africa and Transport South Africa sells a leading international professional body for everyone who works within the supply chain, logistics and transport. And we've got formal media alliances. Very proud in having them on board. Obviously, there are many other media houses as well, but these are in a formal alliance with the Transport Forum. So we've got Freight News, and obviously you guys are welcome to interrupt me should you want to say something from these organizations and sponsors. Freight News has been part of the Transport Forum since the inception 15 years ago, also been known as Freight and Trading Weekly, established, innovative, effective, all about the logistics industry. You need to subscribe to this important newsletter. And there you've got Railways Africa, African Content Specialist Trade Technical Business to Business online publication, covering all aspects of the rail sector, Railways Africa. And we've got Engineering News, premier source of real economy news, and they usually share with us weekly updates. I would like to play this short video to you. Just bear with me for a moment.
Hello and welcome to the roundup of this week's edition of the Engineering News and Mining Weekly magazine, published on Friday, 20 May 2022. In this week's cover article, Engineering News and Mining Weekly contributing editor online Madeleine Arnoldi writes that the Mandela Mining Precinct's test site will provide a platform to trial innovations under real mining conditions. The Mandela Mining Precinct's test mine is poised to deliver value to mining companies, original equipment manufacturers, and other stakeholders while contributing to the industry's sustainability. The Engineering News features focus on valves, where a supplier highlights the importance of technical knowledge when buying valves. Fire prevention and protection, where the need for a fire-related event is finally realized. And heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and refrigeration, where a new containerized bulk air cooling solution is ideal for African mines. The Mining Weekly features focus on Zambian mining and industry, where Zambia's amethysts and emeralds are still tops, but mining could be better. And junior mining, where Southern Africa is deemed highly prospective for diamonds. This week's business leader is Garnet Basson, COO of hybrid hotel group The Capital Hotels and Apartments. And as this week's cartoon shows, Eskom has given its assurance that it will do what it can to limit rotational power cuts during the winter months. There are signs, however, that this winter could be both cold and dark. We hope you enjoyed this week's edition of Creamer Media's Engineering News and Mining Weekly, the magazine that offers you news about developments in the real economy. Happy reading and see you next time.
Great, thank you very much to Creamer Media with their engineering news. We really appreciate that and for their support as well. Right, ladies and gents, we've got C-Track. It's the platinum sponsor of the Transport Forum. It's a leading global software as a service and a big data company for vehicle tracking, fleet management, and insurance telematics solutions. C-Track's actually been part of the Transport Forum also since the inception 15 years ago. And the same with University of Johannesburg, the gold sponsor since the inception of the Transport Forum. So they've got the Department of Transport and Supply Chain Management, also have the Institute for Transport and Logistics Studies. The excellent qualification provides scarce skills and facilitate career development in an important industry. Thank you very much, UJ. Global Trade Solution, founded in South Africa already in 1999, offers customs connect and consulting services. They say they've got innovative solution transforming global supply chain. So you have got Ticket Pro Travel, excellent organization providing you an online booking solution. They say there's no contracts, no hidden fees, just good business with straightforward, fair pricing. So it's a central online booking tool for your corporate travel needs. Thank you very much, Ticket Pro Travel. We've got Ticket Pro Smart, Smart Tab, the Smart Tab solution. It includes key features like comprehensive route management, flexible passenger payment methods, flexible route and fare product setup, shift and dispatch management, cashier system, inspection tools, and comprehensive MIS reports. Thank you very much, Smart Tab, for your gold sponsorship. JC Auditors. All of us perhaps not online to give us some feedback on JC Auditors. So they are SANUS accredited certification and body, providing international recognized certifications. Compliance, such an important thing nowadays in the world we live. Thank you, JC Auditors. Maybe Greta can help me out here. Let's go.
Good morning, Harry, and good morning to all the participants today. Harry, today I'd like to just highlight a concept that many people would have experienced in the training world, and that's after-sales service. In the training environment, once a sale has been made for a training course, that service that happens afterwards, particularly when you're talking about accredited training, is the thing that really makes or breaks that training intervention. And I'd like to just highlight our client support agents that we have that will look after every single training intervention that we offer. And we believe that sets us apart from our competitors. Thanks very much, and looking forward to a great session today.
Likewise, thank you very much, Greta. Thank you for your gold sponsorship. Really appreciate that. Ladies and gents, we've got Bird Air Cargo, gold sponsor, leading cargo airline providing express airport-to-airport solutions and the related services to the courier express logistics industry. Zutari, perhaps somebody from Zutari want to say a few words. Consulting engineers, they say impact engineered. They're a consulting engineering company previously known as Oricon. Been years with the Transport Forum and gold sponsorship. Thank you very much, Zutari. Here we've got Ability. It's a human face of insurance, niche insurance products since 2011. Commercial insurance underwriters, bus and coach insurance specialists. And they're acting on behalf of mutual and federal risk financing. Thank you very much, Ability. Inware Risk Services, grow your business with the right advice, protect it with the right risk advice. It's one of South Africa's largest independent brokers offering personal business and specialized risk and insurance advisory services. Thank you very much, Inware Risk Services, for your gold sponsorship. Perhaps somebody from Unitrans. Unitrans Supply Chain Solutions. They've got a slogan, innovation, expertise delivered. Innovation, expertise delivered. Leading provider of integrated transportation, warehousing, and supply chain-based services to customers with a variety of needs, offering bespoke value propositions in each segment. Thank you very much, Unitrans, for your gold sponsorship. Kathy, tell us more about Standard Bank.
Thank you, Harry. I shall. So we have a 160-year history of serving customers and supporting economic development across Africa. We're the largest financial services group on the continent. So we've got huge scale in terms of strengths to leverage our advantages, where we will defend and grow our current position in the market. We are accelerating towards our 2025 ambition, which is to become a client-centric, digitally enabled platform, such as the Transport Forum, which we love this platform, so that we can compete and win in a world where competitive lines are constantly redrawn and innovation and reinvention and reimagination is required so that one can succeed. Thank you, Harry.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Really appreciate your support. Kathy is also a mentor to myself on many occasions and been a keen supporter of Transport Forum for many years. So thank you very much, Standard Bank. We really appreciate your gold sponsorship. Cuba, somebody from Cuba. They're part of the ICM Mobility Group, which enables public and private transport to move into the digital era. They're talking about journey planning, smart ticketing, streamlining electronic payment, shaping the digital transformation of the mobility sector. So they say the ticketing solutions have been successfully implemented in over 100 cities and regions worldwide, dealing with millions of daily transactions. So they understand mobility, that's for sure. Thank you very much, Cuba. Many years with the Transport Forum as gold sponsorships. EasyClear, somebody from EasyClear. It's a leading software provider for the customs and clearing industry. So also they include freight forwarding and logistic providers covering air, sea, road, and rail. Thank you very much, EasyClear, for your gold sponsorship. Abunia Capital, Public Transport Knowledge Hub, Uisele Majola and team, If you need any advice in the taxi industry, IPT and advisory, you're welcome to contact the Abunia Group, and obviously all these organizations, you can see the links on the Transport Forum's website. So ladies and gents, they're our sponsors and alliances. Let's give them a big hand for making the Transport Forum possible, and that we have excellent content. You know that our Transport Forum's knowledge base, the presentations obviously span over more than 15 years of presentations, and they're all available to everybody complimentary. And that's actually very powerful to search through presentations. And there are more than 900 presentations you can search to obtain information, and that is of note. So I just want to mention that also we've got Olga Mashilo from Belém Bontley Consultant as a BE initiative. We outsourced it to Olga, and there's a number, so kindly make sure that you contact Olga to get your company listed in a very popular business directory. It's only 450 rands per year. It's not really money. And Olga is administrating this business directory for us. Very popular. We're getting very positive feedback from this. So presentations you see today will be uploaded to that website, the Transport Forum's website. You need to log in to access the presentations. So that to the left of the screen, should you go to that website, you'll see your user login. Should you not have a username and password yet, you need to click on sign up, and the sign up option then will take you through a simple little process to create your own complimentary account, create your own username and password. You can log in. Once you've logged in, then you can go to events, you select download, and it will give you a little search engine. Two ways you can search. You can, at the top field here, you can either type in a person's surname or a title like logistics or buses or whatever. Hit search and it will search through 15 years worth of presentations. Or you can go to category and you can select the event's date, and it will bring up, when you hit search, all that day's presentations for you to download. So now the prize winning, ladies and gents, and it's now the time that you should keep your finger on the chat room, and the first person answering each question correctly is the winner. Remember, it's only locals, and should you be an employee of the related company, then please don't answer the question, and we will courier the prize to the winners. So let's see who answers the next question right, and you can be a winner of that Magneto rechargeable LED compact light. So the first question then is as follows. If you are involved in the bus and coach industry, of which association should you become a member of? There we go. Decide. I see you've got it right. Congratulations. Decide that win that one. Congratulations, Decide. Right. So the same prize can be won by the following person. Here comes the next question. One of our sponsors is in Supply Chain Solutions. Their slogan is Innovation, Expertise, Delivered. Who are they? Still waiting for it. It's not soft. It's related, but it's not. Still waiting for it. In Supply Chain Solutions. It's not Cartrack. If I got you with this one. It's a logistics company. They in Supply Chain Solutions. Their slogan is Innovation, Expertise, Delivered. There we go. Berlin, congratulations, you've got it. It's Unitrans. So Berlin Mudambu, you're the winner of that one. Just making a note here. We will contact you guys for your delivery address, and we will get your prizes delivered to you. Congratulations to our winners. Right, ladies and gents, we are back to our program for the day, cross-border challenges, and I'm proudly handing you over now to our host and chair for the day, Mr. Basil Govender. He's the Executive Manager of South African Bus Operators Association, and he's going to take us through the program. Thank you very much, Basil.
Thank you, Harry. Lovely prizes going there. You had us stumped for that second one for a bit. But okay, once again, good morning, everybody, and slightly different welcome then from the side, from Sabawa and Sibasa. I'm wearing a couple of hats today. So from that side of things, welcome and thanks for your time and attendance. Thank you, Harry, and the Transport Forum team, and also to all your sponsors for allowing us this platform to discuss the state of the cross-border passenger transport and specifically the bus sector issues with a purpose of reflecting and focusing on the challenges faced by the sector overall. Against this background and for the purposes of setting the basis for further engagements and consultations, we've put together today's program more of an update and to connect the various stakeholders to the status quo within the sector. Lots of unique challenges within public transport, but within the cross-border sector, it's got its own set of challenges. And as a result, we thought it ideal to bring everybody together to set a base. We certainly will engage in robust discussion and you'll hear from the various presenters, but there's a lot happening behind the scenes that perhaps the wider industry and community at large is not aware of. And we need to highlight some of the issues around the cross-border sector. So as per the program, you will hear from and about CBASA. This is a new entity positioning itself and formed to represent the cross-border bus operators within South Africa. Then we're excited to have the Border Management Authority present as well. It's a significant development within the space and in the entire border management and control processes. Then we've got CBAWA, which is an allied organization. Mr. Alex Kotsiro is present. It's allied in the sense to CBASA, but they represent the interests of operators across the border. We will hear from the regulatory body within the space, the Cross-Border Road Transport Agency. Harry, I know they are not present at this point, but hopefully they're joining soon. And then to the end of the program, on the last segment, we'll get some insight into the developments and upgrade around the Beitbridge border post. RLBS, the entity involved in that, will join us later because they've been called to an urgent on-site meeting as we speak, but they will join us later. So as always, the packed and tight program, but as always, again, we will allow for discussion and questions post-presentations and at the segmented or facilitated question and answer segment. So please contribute via the chat function. We hope this is informative. We hope it sets a base and a tone for further discussions around cross-border challenges around the bus and passenger sector. So with that, then I will move on to the first presentation, which is being done by myself. Harry, have I got permission to share screen?
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
How does that look? All good?
Good, thank you.
All right, folks. Yeah, so this is behind the scenes, me changing the hat to present to you on behalf of CBASA on the issue of cross-border challenges within the sector. So CBASA stands for the Cross-Border Bus Association of South Africa. And overview that I'll give you is what is CIBASA, where does it come from, what does it represent, and the leadership. And then from a CIBASA point of view, what is the overview of the cross-border sector, incorporating some of the industry-related priorities for 2022, and then we'll tail off with some observations and recommendations in that regard. So jumping right into it, folks, the background to CIBASA and what it stands for and what it endeavors to achieve. So prior to 2018, the agency, the CBRTA, dealt with bus operators via the bus forum meetings. That would be a host of individual operators, albeit that it was inclusive, but it was problematic at the same time. But sitting within that, there were also associations that constituted themselves, namely 3 associations, and then you had larger operators as well, Greyhound, Elder Coaches, Eagle Liner, Intercape, and the 3 associations that stood at that point individually representing their members was SICBOA, SIFA, and SABOA. So during a meeting in 2018, it was resolved that the 3 associations should work closer together and try and form one association that becomes a representative of the entire sector. The CBRTA arranged that meeting, and it was resolved to conclude an MOU towards closer cooperation and working between the associations. And given the fact that the larger operators and more established operators such as Intercape and Greyhound play an important role and have presence, these companies were also invited to be part of the MOU as they did not align to any particular association. So they were approached, they became part of it and did sign. Through this process and in tandem with the CBRTA, the entire alignment process and facilitation was being handled by SABOA and is still being handled by SABOA. So through 2019 and through good cooperation between the 5 participating partners, the various issues were addressed successfully. We then got to a point of agreement, and it was time to determine a name or to refer to the association as an entity. There was a resolution to then use the name Cross-Border Bus Association of South Africa, hence CIBASA. It also became quickly evident that having done that, that was the easy part. We needed to formalize CIBASA as an entity to improve its effectiveness. And a decision was taken to transform the association into a registered association. And under facilitation from SABOA, the formalization of that was progressed, but a lot of issues and unforeseen factors have delayed the process. The registration is pending and still underway, but some of the key issues within the various associations, we had changes in key personnel and representations. Then we had COVID, and between a closure and a withdrawal from operations in parts from some of the larger operators who were signatory to the MOU, that's Greyhound and Intercape, we had to then revisit the issue. So given the prioritization of COVID issues and the non-operations, that we agreed to defer the formalities and rather go for an interim structure to be put in place to guide the process. It was done in April 21. The 3 associations in Intercape nominated representatives. A 12-member council was put together. And then from that, an EXCO was elected from the representatives to oversee the functioning of CIBASA towards formalization. So the office bearers were elections were conducted under guidance and oversight from the CBRTA legal and oversight function. The democratic process returned the committee as follows. So chairperson is myself, SABOA, representation. The Deputy Chairperson, Mr. Baloy, the Secretary is present today, Ms. Charlotte Monakisi from SAIFA, and then we've got additional EXCO members from Intercape, Julia Mashlaba and Adrian. So it was intended to be an interim structure to guide the process into 2022, but further COVID issues and other challenges within the sector has delayed that somewhat. So the intention there that we would allocate responsibilities to each of the interim executive or management committee members to keep some momentum. So we've been building momentum for SIBASA, but you know, there are competing ideologies and preferences. Some of the individual stresses of each of these members managing their own entities as well as limited time. So we are still intending to pursue the finalization and registration of SIBASA. So the immediate future, what we will do as SIBASA is we will arrange a workshop with the broader membership to decide on the broad principles which need to be included and put into a draft constitution. Then we'll do a draft constitution based on the guidelines that emanate from the workshop. And then protocol-wise, we've got to tick all the boxes correctly to be registered as an entity and make decisions on whether it's an NPO or not. So we'll have to arrange a founding meeting, invite all or selected cross-border operators and associations, discuss the draft constitution. It needs to be adopted, identify the new 4 core founding members, and then in terms of that adopted constitution and founding membership status, formally then elect an executive committee or a management committee, and from that coordinate and manage the direction of the affairs of the association going forward. So it's an interim structure looking to solidify its process going forward. And then once we've done that formal workshop founding meeting, we'll then elect a chairperson, vice chairperson, and then resolve to take secretary and treasurers. And then all the formalities and niceties around setting up the website and the logo and letterheads alike. So that is SIBASA from a history to date point of view. So in a schematic format, you see it sits central to everything that happens within the sector. SIBASA is in the middle, represented or comprised of SAIFA, SACPOA, Intercape, SABOA, who represent the sector operators broadly speaking. And then around us and entangled with us are the agency, the National Department, the Border Management Authority, enforcement at all tiers, and you're sitting with the taxi and other sub-modes on one side and international operators. So if you look at it, quite intertwined, a very compact sector, but with lots of challenges at play. So from a stakeholder point of view, one thing the graphic says and reflects is that the operator is central to all aspects and success of the sector. So we've not had a chance, and unfortunately, the operator may not have felt the full effect or impact of SIBASA, but it's work in progress. And that's the priority for 2022 in terms of communication and promotion. So let's move on to some of what we believe is the overview and some of the top issues around it. So from an overview point of view, let's look at demographics. As with public transport at large, and when you drill down into public transport, data and data sets always a problem. It really is a severe hamstring injury of this industry at large. And this sector is no different. So there's no current factual picture as to the actual demographics. That's one of the things SIBASA will endeavor, and I'll speak about a little bit later as well. And within the demographics currently, individual associations and operator ideological differences and narratives still impact on sharing of information. There's a bit of a reservation as to being transparent around data set. So that creates the biggest challenge, is that there is a lack of formal database accounting for legal operators, and there's a lot of finger pointing as to who's permitted to operate and who should operate within the sector. So then it is imperative that as an industry and a sector data set with integrity be established soonest. And if we do that, that process will lead to, or must lead to, transparent sharing of information. We can compile a database of all operators. We can audit processes, starting with the permits in circulation. And then we can sub-filter an inventory of permits and operators that are South African based, non-South African based, because there's some complexities within each one as well, in terms of base and actual heritage and ownership. But it is important, and the data set is crucial for understanding the all-round cross-border flow, and not just the current focus on high volume traffic, which centers around the South African Zimbabwe route. Once we have that, we can then initiate strategic interventions for the rooting out of illegal operations and practices and reset the base. COVID-19, we all think we might be beating it, but it's left some long-standing effects. Pre-COVID-19, this sector was already experiencing declining markets. So, the pandemic has really impacted it further. During the periods of lockdowns, the cross-border travels were restricted, except for repatriation. That led to other complications. The different restrictions and limitations and reopening of borders and changing of regulations between South Africa and neighboring countries was never aligned. It was never done at the same time. When we eased restrictions, they were still in force around some of our neighbors. So it impacted tremendously around planning and travel. And then the repatriation processes were handled very inconsistently. There was no official announcements or clear source of data as to who the approved operators are and what repatriation processes entail. So they were done on the basis of exemption letters, and then somehow it led to an increase in the practice of hiring of buses, and then further led to a general decline in regulatory compliance. Most importantly, or not, depending who you speak to, there was no relief or assistance to the sector from government during and after the COVID restrictions. It has inevitably placed pressure on operators, because if you take the period of hard lockdown versus standing back up from state of disaster being uplifted and borders reopening, the accrual of costs and the financial pressures brought about have made it difficult for individual operators to stand back up, ready to roll. And you've got a backlog of licensing and regulatory issues that they needed to catch up with. So COVID is impacted, just as it's done many other sectors. But I think if you put this in the context of tourism and cross-border travel, it's been really dire. So in terms of facilities, it stands to reason, if you want to promote healthy, sustainable cross-border and long-distance passenger transport, you need to have proper facilities that stand to promote it, and also create havens of safety and ease of travel. Excuse me. Most of the South African facilities that exist are mainly within the PRASA domain and ambit. It's really seen as a facility that's rented out per se to users and contracted agreements. But the management and allocation of sub-facilities and access to these facilities is questionable and is inconsistent. Not sure when any of you last visited one of the multinodal or intermodal facilities. It leaves a lot to be desired. So what's happening is that there's a rise in ad hoc and suboptimal facilities being used. And at this point, if you look at it, the industry perception is by mainly foreign operators, but I think there's a tendency of local operators to also mask their activities behind the inverted commas of foreign operators. So springing up on an ad hoc basis at any location that might be deemed appropriate, or where one is shut down, it is moved to another, but it's an almost informal facility. All of this compounds a negative environment, as well as a negative experience for the sector and its market. So the requirements here and ongoing as well, in terms of discussions, we need to document all facilities within SA, both legal and illegal, and then formalize a strategy for the upliftment of those facilities and develop the creation of multimodal facilities where existing ones can be enhanced. This must include policing, management, accountability for compliance and adherence within the facilities. And then we can keep one eye on, or keep a track on the Bike Bridge Renewal and Modernization Program and see what best practices we can import or bring in to our development and thinking on this side. But ultimately, from a facility point of view, strive to achieve, sustain, and develop world-class facilities befitting the experience of cross-border. Important, and you'll find this as a theme, I would imagine a lot today, is that regulatory issues cut across here broadly. The sector is subject to the following key areas of legislation and governance prescripts, primarily the Cross-Border Road Transport Act, and then sitting alongside it or along over the years are the various bilateral road transport agreements. But in spite of these key pieces of legislation, there's still inconsistency in application and treatment. When we sit on this side of the border, we'll say it's inconsistent and how you treat and apply these acts and agreements to South African operators. And I'm sure the foreign operators are saying the same from across the border. And then there's the element of foreign owned but locally registered operators sitting in that midst. So key for governance, the management and monitoring of concurrences and issuing of permits is also vastly different between the countries and how it's done, and which entity within government has got that authority to do so. There's been a dramatic and increased swing towards the transport of goods under the guise of luggage, given the declining passenger market. And the need for constantly moving goods. This is now taken on a new guise. And it's also then creating perceptions and inconsistent application of the regulatory enforcement between the various levels of authorities in South Africa. Going on then in terms of enforcement, so the regulation here, as you can see, across all tiers, and various different entities who have own mandates and sometimes expressly review and enforce issues within their mandate in a very closed-minded approach. So there's high levels of inconsistency, and there's many reports of non-existent to lack of enforcement or turning a blind eye and, making a plan type of thing. So it's created a trend over the last year, which is increasing for the issuing of spot fines. Again, a highly contentious issue, which either leads to or could lead to the impounding of vehicles if spot fines are not paid. It puts the driver firmly in focus with the traffic official as to who's right and who's wrong. So all of this combined is seeking or highlighting the need for a centralized system for where we can report and log incidences of spot fines, get a trend, know what is happening on the road or on the ground, and then hand in hand with that, there should be a forum for review and monitoring of accountability of all parties on the enforcement side of things. Some other challenges, These are at play within the bus and culture industry at large, and this sector is not averse to it. The economic landscape currently does not bode well for sustainability. You've got interest rates, exchange rates, fuel prices, high inflation rate, and the labor environment, all going from a cost point of view outside of norms we were used to in the past. So against that declining market, there's a growing illegal market that's also competing in the space. This sector is under threat for continued existence, and the rising number of new entrants in a sector that's already oversaturated exacerbates the dire state at play. Always lurking, always imminent, always under discussion, intermodal issues. When you paint the picture of the economic landscape and what's happening behind the scenes, inevitably those issues cascade towards higher levels or increases in levels of crime, intermodal strife, illegal operations, extortion, all put in. So real pressure on the sector all around. So from a concluding point of view, and just some observations, there's not been very much data collection and research here, except for a couple of papers here and there, but the agency's role is, one of the key pillars of the agency is to get involved in this. But based on observations at this point and data collection, and I stress these are non-scientific, so it's people within our team and our fraternity that have collated info, the following is apparent. So if we assume that all operations are on a permit-issued basis, which is done by the CBRTA, it is apparent that the minibus taxi sector does operate a larger share between the modes. And this relates to traffic and transport between South Africa and other countries anyway. So the number of permits issued by the authorities at this point, again, non-scientific, but from observation, seems heavily skewed in favor of foreign operators as opposed to a balanced allocation that should be taking place. So then this creates all kinds of assumptions, and it leaves the impression that the current market, and in particular, the SA-Zimbabwe route, which dominates discussions and narratives, is oversaturated. So how do we take the next steps? We need to do a detailed, in-depth, market-wide sector study, and the research is urgently required. That will deliver scientific data, and the scientific data set will be used to shape the discourse and the direction of strategy, legislation, as well as regulation. It must involve all industry stakeholders. There must be a serious audit and, if applicable, revision of operator accreditation and compliance. There needs to be improved communication between authorities around the issuing of further permits for applicable routes. And in this way, it will limit further oversaturation on routes. And then critically, we need a central platform for the disseminating and communicating of information. I think all of this, and then if we strengthen the capacity for improved stakeholder representation and contribution towards existing agreements and development of new agreements, that is where the CIBASA role starts taking its active place and meaningful contribution, because the authorities can't speak over us and around us without involving key stakeholders from the operator and the sector. So for success and buy-in from the sector, the CIBASA representation must be included consistently. And I think, folks, that's the overview from a CIBASA and operator point of view. Wearing the CIBASA hat, I want to thank the Transport Forum and the rest of the panelists today. But broadly speaking, if you need any inquiries around CIBASA, how to join and what is available, please contact Charlotte on those details, email and cell phone, and we'll gladly assist. And thank you very much for allowing us the opportunity to present. Harry, thank you.
Thank you so much, Basil. Well said, well prepared presentation, and clearly I've learned a lot in this presentation. Thank you so much. Basil, yes, so we're going to introduce the next presenter. I see you got a bit of a cough there. So
Yeah, just clearing the throat and a slack of vodka on the side just to fry me up.
Thank you, Basil. So you can
Right.
introduce the next presenter. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Thank you, Harry. Colleagues, yeah, by now you all should be aware of the Border Management Authority Act, which came into being, which is intended, amongst other things, broadly speaking, to provide for the establishment, organization, regulation, functions, and control of the Border Management Authority, and to provide for the appointment, terms of office, conditions of service, and functions of the Commissioner and Deputy Commissioners. If you are not aware, the Minister of Home Affairs, in his press statement in October 2021, Dr. Aaron Matsualedi announced the appointment of the Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner of the Border Management Authority. So we are extremely excited today to have as part of our panelists the Commissioner himself, representing the BMA. He's given me permission to call him Dr. Mike. So Dr. Mike Masiapato is the National Commissioner and Chief Executive Officer of the Border Management Authority. Dr. Mike has spent almost 2 decades working for various departments within the Justice, Crime Prevention and Security cluster. He has also worked for the SAPS, SANDF, the Intelligence Services, and the Financial Intelligence Center. Dr. Masiapato holds 2 PhDs, one in public management from the University of Johannesburg, and the other one in governance from Wits University. He's here today to give us some insight into the BMA and the BMA's future plans. So, Dr. Masiapato, welcome, sir. Thank you for your time today. And over to you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Basil. If colleagues can then allow me to share the screen, you will just confirm with me when it is fairly visible, and then we can start the conversation. Can you just confirm if it is in order?
All in order, you can continue.
That's okay. So thank you very much, Program Director Basil. And of course, thanks, Harry, for the invite. And of course, thanks to the rest of the Transport Forum colleagues. Indeed, I listened to Basil's presentation, and I then realized that indeed, the coming in of the Border Management Authority into the space becomes very much critical to be able to start resolving or even dealing with some of the issues that Basil has started to indicate as the problems. And I suppose as the other co-presenters also comes through, there will be that synergy that we will need then to be able to build, particularly in terms of what the contribution of the Border Management Authority will be into the space. So we have effectively titled the reflection as reflecting on creating an integrated border management platform, which we know it is the Border Management Authority. So in terms of the purpose really of the brief is just to give the members of the Transport Forum the update as well as the rest of the stakeholders, the intended contribution of the BMA towards effectively facilitating the cross-border transportation of persons and goods. That is fairly the key point, and we want to effectively reflect on that particular provision, and of course see as to what will be the contribution of the BMA in this particular journey. Colleagues, in terms of the outline, I will then start with bullet 1 by reflecting on the rationale for the country to have decided to move away from a multi-agency approach in terms of border management into an integrated border management platform. That becomes very much critical, and I think we will be able to see what we seek to realize. Secondly, we will just have some bit of a reflection on the actual mandate of the BMA as provided for in the piece of legislation that Basil had referred to, which is the Border Management Authority. But thirdly, we will then reflect on the dynamics around the movement from a multi-agency approach into this integrated border management platform. I will then, in a way, take you into confidence in the work that I am currently busy with in terms of achieving this particular objective. And I'll also give you the indication as to where we are as we speak. But thirdly, we'll also reflect on the actual benefits that will actually be seen by yourselves and the rest of the stakeholders with interest in terms of border issues, particularly around the facilitation of cross-border movement, which I suppose is what is your issue of critical importance. And lastly, I will also give you some bit of confidence bring you some bit of confidence into the strategic milestones that we are working on to make sure that this Border Management Authority is fully operationalized, as it were. So those are the 5 key items that one will then be going through. I have been given 25 minutes and I will definitely speak within that particular context. So colleagues, I think we needed to start by having to have an understanding as to why do we have to then have a integrated border management platform, as a country. This is a very powerful and a very important tool. When we talk about this particular provision, I do know some people think that this is just an idea, but the reality of it is that this is a mechanism that has been appreciated by other jurisdictions in other parts of the world, and it is really working very well. And at least one has been having that opportunity of having been part of this journey, at least for over 15 years to this point. But why do we have to actually move in this direction? What is the problem statement? I want to just start and give you this indication out of this particular slide that when we did the transition in 1994, as a country, we did not have a particular conscious approach in terms of how are we going to manage our borders. Effectively, we didn't. But what actually happened, it was just something that happened by the way. And that particular happening ended up with us having a multi-agency approach being adopted as our border management approach. And it was not necessarily done consciously. It is something that just happened, to the extent that we ended up with around 7 departments. I would say 6 departments and 1 public entity located in the ports of entry environment. And on that, I think some of yourself, you might have also seen that out of those 7 located in the border environment, they would actually be implementing several pieces of legislation in terms of where they are located. And most of those not necessarily talking to each other, and none of those actually even being integrated. To that extent, people will be in the ports of entry out there reporting to their respective headquarters. In the actual ports, there hasn't necessarily been any bringing together of any of those efforts. So when we then, I will say, realized a bit, almost 2 years from 1994 in 1996, we realized that we have these multi-agencies on the ground and they are not being coordinated. And then all of a sudden we woke up to say, let's then have some mechanism to coordinate our efforts in the border environment. It was on that basis, colleagues, that in 1996, we came up with the Border Affairs Coordinating Committee. And the intention was to try to have some kind of coordination in the work that is happening at the border environment. But even in doing that, it was some kind of a committee that actually was located in Pretoria, coordination happening in Pretoria, but the borders are all over there. And it definitely became clear it's not gonna work. We then shifted just a year down the line to create a national interdepartmental structure on border control. That was a structure created to try and say, let's then have this structure actually put on the ground in the various ports and try to coordinate our efforts there. That worked a bit. It took us from 1997 until 2001. At that point, we realized that all those coordinations that were taking place were more focused into the movement of persons and all of that. And there has been some bit of neglect in terms of the movement of cargo and all of that. That is why in 2001, we then established the Border Control Operational Coordinating Committee, which then get located towards the SARS side of things. And of course, SARS actually even financed the committee. There was some kind of work happening and all of that. But the reality of it is all that effort shifted the entire thing away from the movement of persons into the movement of cargo. That particular issue pushed us until towards the World Cup in 2010. When we then woke up, we realized that, by the way, there's going to be a lot of people coming for the World Cup. That on its own actually says, what is it that we are going to do in facilitating the movement of persons? Because the BCOCC is more focused on trade. We then shifted again. We created the fourth iteration of coordination, and that is the Interagency Clearing Forum, which was effectively shifting away from cargo back into the movement of persons, and we cleared people in terms of coming through into the World Cup. Unfortunately, no security, no nothing. What ultimately that created for us was a situation where we had a lot of undesirable individuals coming through into the country in the name of coming for the World Cup, and we facilitated all of those. As we speak now, most of them never left the country, and I think the rest, we all know what is going on now. At that point, 3 years down the line, we realized, but by the way, we shifted away from cargo. Now the trucks start to queue on the line because there's not focus on it. And then just 3 years after the World Cup, we then moved to create National Border Management Coordinating Committee, which was some kind of bringing together a bit of a hybrid, focusing a bit on the movement of cargo, focusing a bit on the movement of persons. That is the fifth and the last iteration of coordination that we created as a country to this point. And I want to confirm that this particular NBMCC, it is still operational as we speak. Therefore, what have we seen in the past 28 years? Honestly, I think we are all aware that the multi-agency approach up to this point and the 5 iteration of coordination that we've put on the ground did not help us as a country. What happened, we've seen a lot of fragmentation, and I think we are all aware of the kind of fragmentation. I think Basil spoke about some of the results arising from those fragmentations. We have seen a lot of silo mentality in our ports of entry, where everybody will be doing as per their own area of focus. We've seen corruption being highly normalized in that particular environment. Of course, out of all of those issues, we then had the discussion, why don't we move away from this multi-agency approach and have an integrated border management platform, at least with a single command and control at the port environment? And I can tell you now, that discussion started in 2008. I was still a very young analyst in the intelligence environment when the discussion actually started, until at least in 2013, when Cabinet formally agreed that indeed we need to move. And of course, from 2013, there has been discussions around the act and pushbacks and everything, at least until, as you know by now, 2020, when ultimately the president then signed the Border Management Authority Act. Why did I have to give this background, colleagues? I had to start here so that at least we will be able to appreciate what we seek to do in terms of integrating our borders. Now, if we move to the next slide, you will realize that the next slide starts to give us what is then the legal mandate of this particular Border Management Authority. If you look into the BMA Act, you will realize in Section 5 that the functions of BMA are fairly 3 in that particular provision. The first one you will note is about facilitating and managing the legitimate movement of persons within the border law enforcement area and the port of entry. And I do know that intellectually there is some kind of confusion as to what is a border law enforcement area. Border law enforcement area, we mean the entire border environment, inclusive of the port of entry and also on the borderline. So the BMA will therefore be operating in both the port of entry as well as on the borderline. Is present on the borderline, working together with the SNDF, is going to be more looking at the vulnerable segments of the borderline, as well as areas where we call informal community crossing points. It is in those areas where the BMA will also be present, particularly in dealing with civilians and in making sure that we are able to allow and facilitate the movement of normal civilians who are in communities where the border fence has cut through the village. And that is basically where the BMA is going to be operating. The SNDF will still be responsible for the broader safeguarding of our borderline broadly, as it were. But BMA will just be deployed statically in those critical elements on the borderline. But the second responsibility, colleagues, is around facilitating and managing the legitimate movement of goods as well as services, similarly in the border law enforcement area and the port of entry. you will note that that particular function there, it is the function that is more in line with customs, and it is mainly done by our SARS colleagues. But the other issue that is very much critical, the Act then compels of us to also, in as much as we would have done the integration of the border management function, we still have to have some kind of cooperation and coordination that needs to happen. The reason why that needs to happen is, number one, you will be aware that the Border Management Authority Act had effectively not included SARS inside BMA. And that is a bit of a political issue, but that is the status quo. So because of that, in the port of entry, there will still be presence of SARS in the midst of BMA. And you will see in the next slide, what does that mean? But the key issue to note is there has still to be a cooperation that will be happening between the Border Management Authority as well as the SAPS as well as the SANDF. And the reason is the SANDF could not be integrated into BMA. The SAPS in its bigger totality could not be integrated into BMA. And I will be able to explain that in the next slide. But one thing that is also very critical is in doing all of this work, BMA will then take that responsibility to also deal with interjurisdictional crimes in the ports of entry as well as in the borderline, particularly the vulnerable segments, where the people are pushing counterfeit goods as well as illegal border crossings and all of those, together with your wildlife trafficking. That is going to be the work of the Border Management Authority. Section 4, subsection 2 then brings a very interesting element, and that is the Border Management Authority and its officials will be the only exclusive individuals in the border environment who will be responsible for border law enforcement. So it means every other function that is taking place within that environment has to be brought through into the BMA. And that is what this slide is all about, colleagues. I need to be a bit explicit on this particular slide, colleagues. The intention on this particular slide is to demonstrate as we speak. I've spoken about 7, I will say department and 1 entity that are actually in the border environment. You will see them on the left-hand side there. You have your Home Affairs, which is purely doing immigration function, as we are all aware. We have Port Health, which is doing port health-related functions, which actually is currently the center because of the COVID issues. And I'll also talk a bit on that. And we have Forestry, Fisheries, and the Environment, which effectively does your biosecurity-related issues around the movement of fauna and flora in our borders. But we also have the colleagues from Agriculture, Land Reform, and Rural Development who are dealing with issues around agriculture and plants movements and all that. But we have an element of the SAPS that is called border policing. They're doing what is called border access control. Now, with the BMA, the work that I am busy with, colleagues, is there is a work that is taking place as we speak. That work means all of those 5 functions, as you see them on screen, the front line function of all of those are going to leave those mother departments, and they're going to be the work of BMA. So BMA is going to be responsible for doing immigration function, port health function, biosecurity, agriculture related, as well as access control. None of those departments that are listed there will no longer be existing in the port of entry from the 1st of April, 2023. That is the integration work that we are doing now. What does that mean? What it means is we are effectively using what is called Section 97 of the Constitution, wherein the respective ministers, we are identifying those particular frontline functions from those respective departmental legislation. We are going to transfer all of those functions into the BMA, and therefore the integrated BMA will then become alive and well on the 1st of April, 2023. So which basically mean, when you go towards the right there, that BMA will then be operating as this integrated border management platform. There's going to be one command and control in the border environment, and there's going to be one port commander in each and every port. You will then realize, if you go further, each and every port will then have one port commander. And that one commander will be taking responsibility, being the employee of the Border Management Authority out of those 5 work streams and beyond. That is in the context of immigration, port health, biosecurity, agriculture, as well as border control. They will then stand as the work streams in the environment. And in there, we will have people who will be specialists in as far as those functions are concerned. but they're also going to be generalists responsible for those various issues. More importantly, we will then have one uniform for all of those individuals. And of course, they will be identified through different insignia in terms of the work that they need to be doing. If you look at the bottom end, you will realize there that we have the Defense Force, as I've indicated, they will still operating on the borderline. We have an implementation protocol with them, and we need to then identify the vulnerable segments where the border guards will be statically deployed, as well as the community crossing points and all of those. If you look at SARS, as I've indicated, they'll also operate outside the Border Management Authority, inside the port of entry, but mainly we will be doing the trade facilitation together, but law enforcement will fairly be done by BMA, as it were. As I move towards conclusion, colleagues, this is then the slide that brings something that never existed before. And that is what we call intelligence-led as well as risk management-based border management. So what we are going to be creating as we speak now, we are going to create what is called the National Targeting Center. Every paperwork about it has actually been finalized. The National Targeting Center will be located at the head office where BMA is, as we speak, which is in Hatfield. Each and every port, you will be aware, colleagues, that we have 72 ports of entry in the country. Out of the 72, you will know 53 of those are land. You will know 11 of those are international airports and 9 of those are seaports. So BMA will be responsible for all of those. So in that particular context, each and every port will have what we call Port Targeting Center. And that is an IT-based environment. And that particular Port Targeting Center will be able to take everything that is happening around the port and be able to have them inside the Port Targeting Center from an IT point of view. And they will be able to fit into the National Targeting Center, and a lot of the processes that will have to be taking place will have to be done through those particular mechanisms. This particular way of doing things, colleagues, is being done by other jurisdictions. It is a mechanism which effectively will facilitate the movement of goods and persons across our borders seamlessly, to the extent that those that are cleared through the intelligence and risk management activities will not be delayed at the port of entry with unnecessary searches or unnecessary whatever, but they will be able to pass through on the basis that they are being cleared as not bringing any kind of risk. Only those that are identified, and of course identified out of the risk modeling, they will then have to be put on the side to be able to be engaged on. In that manner, we will be able to make sure that we reduce the levels of queues as well as the waste of time that we've been doing over time in terms of trade facilitation. And of course, for those that will have to be engaged on in instances where they are found to have broken certain parts of the law, they will have to be activated. We have to activate other role players, which is on the extreme right, whether within the context of the Inspectorate for those that will have to be deported and all of those kind of activities. Those that will be sitting with stolen cars or things like that, SAPS or the Hawks will be activated. And of course, those that might be wanted through the global platform will have to activate Interpol and all of those issues. So colleagues, this is then the model that we basically call the activation of what we call a risk-based border management as well as intelligence-based border management. And all of these issues as we speak are being done at this point as we speak, so that by the 1st of April, when BMA is launched ultimately, we are able to have everything moving up to this point. Now, because we have spoken about all of these things in terms of where we are, let me then indicate as I move towards conclusion in terms of where are we now in this particular journey of getting the BMA established. So what I can say to you now is from the 1st of April 2022 until the 31st of March 2023, BMA remains within the Department of Home Affairs, being incubated so that we can be assisted to be established, as it were. What it means is the department is helping us to get ourselves capacitated so that we can be able to be ready to be declared as a Schedule 3A public entity on the 1st of April 2023. There are other things, as I've indicated, that we have to be doing. The implementation protocols, as I've said, between SAPS, SANDF, and the BMA are at advanced stages. I can confirm the one with SARS has been signed, the one with defense had also been signed, the one with defense, with the police is about to be signed very soon. At the same time, we have to finalize Section 97 proclamations, as I've indicated, which the president will then use to transfer all those functions that I've spoken about from those respective departments into BMA. But one thing that I also need to say under bullet B is to indicate that the mother department will still retain the legislative and the policy-making processes. So BMA will basically be a front office of all of those departments doing the implementation of what needs to be taking place. Typical example to that is the Department of Health will still be the one who indicates the people who come to the country should bring a COVID negative certificate, for instance, and they send that instruction to me as the commissioner. I have to make sure that happens. The Department of Agriculture, for instance, will be the one which will tell us there is foot and mouth disease that has been picked up in Botswana, no more meat import, for instance, that must come through. They send the instruction to me, I make sure at the border environment we implement. Department of Home Affairs will still be the one deciding which one must come with visa, no visa, or anything like that, and I will effectively implement. So that is the model that we are talking about in this instance. And of course, we have to fill the positions that are critical in this incubation period. We have to finalize our budget with National Treasury. The Minister of Treasury or Finance is going to talk about our financing after we have shown how much we have got from the respective departments through the transfers. We are actually going to set up our committees by December to make sure 1st of April, all our committees are functional. We are ready to move, as it were. And of course, by the 1st of April, 2023, we should be able to exit the incubation as and be announced as a Schedule 3A public entity. So that is, in short, I will say, the update in terms of where we are in getting the BMA established. One thing that is very much critical is BMA is to be established to be able to start addressing some of the dysfunctionalities that we are able to know and that we have been witnessing over time. One of the critical examples about the issues Basil has spoken about is the issue around the permits that are being given to the bus operators, for instance. As we speak now, we have instances where there are bus operators from our neighboring countries, which are supposed to be holding permits from their respective countries. Actually, I think you might probably have seen one of the buses that has been detained in April when we were in Beitbridge. That particular bus did not even have a permit. The driver did not even have a license. Almost 90% of the people the bus was ferrying were all without any documentation. And that is the kind of challenge that we are sitting with. So once BMA starts being operational on the ground, the border guards will be on the ground. Law enforcement is going to change completely. And that is why, as Basil is indicating, there has been a blurring of line between those that are operating illegally and those that are operating legally. And when lawlessness takes shape, even those operators who are trying to operate legally and comply, they end up being pushed out of the system because illegality has taken root. And you have a lot of illegal operators who come into the space and stifle the entire environment. So BMA border guards in particular, in terms of border law enforcement, will be dealing with those issues. Let me then conclude by saying, we are saying as BMA will remain a critical stakeholder of the Transport Forum and the rest of the other structures that has been spoken to by Basil. And I suppose we should be able to work together to change the manner in which as a country we have handled the issues of border management. And to that extent, we are just saying, we are asking the membership of the Transport Forum, as well as all of the colleagues, that they continue to kind of support us in this particular journey of getting BMA operationalized. Because we know by now, there are some elements that continues to push back in this particular journey, because they are current beneficiaries of the chaos that we have and we see in terms of our border environment. So let me then stop there, colleagues, and thank you very much, Basil, for the opportunity, as well as Harry, in terms of the time given. I think my time is now up. Thank you very much.
Excellent stuff. There you have it, colleagues. I think we are now much the wiser in respect of the rationale, the legislative mandate, and the intended operations of the BMA and its structures. Dr. Masiapato, sir, we wish you well during the incubation period. You have our support, and I think you've just sung a song that is music to Mr. Harry's ears, in that I'm sure you'll continue to engage and keep you close to the Transport Forum. I certainly will ensure that we give you the space and the opportunity to update. Please keep us close as stakeholders. We look forward and we are available to engage. But thank you very much for your time. And it was a real honor and pleasure to have you on board with us starting this journey. And all the best from our side. Thank you, sir. Okay, Harry, we good to proceed? Colleagues, yeah, we're going on to the third segment and the third presentation. And at this point, CBOA, the Coach and Bus Operators Association, by way of introduction, was formed to represent the interests of the operators, broadly speaking, outside of South Africa. They are very astutely led by Mr. Alex Katsiro as the Chief Executive Officer, and then his team. I'm sure he'll tell us more about that. Alex will now give us a presentation on, from a CBOA perspective, on cross-border operations post-COVID-19 and incorporating some of their thoughts on improving efficiency without compromising passenger safety. Alex, as always, great to interact with you. Thank you for your time today as well, and welcome, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Basil, and thank you very much, Harry, for hosting us. Good morning, colleagues. As indicated, my name is Alex Katsiro, based in Harare, Zimbabwe, and this is where I'm coming from at the moment. And I think one of the few advantages of COVID is the unlocking of technology for the rest of us to not need to fly to anywhere to make a presentation. Please allow me to share my screen, Harry.
You're allowed.
All right.
From the beginning, just select to the left of your screen.
Okay. I need to
try again. Slideshow. Again, click on slideshow at the top.
And unfortunately, this screen is blocking me. Let me.
You can grab it and move it away.
No, you're fine. Okay, I'm sure it's everyone can see me clearly.
It should be fine in a moment. If you can click on from beginning again, click on from beginning.
Nothing?
Still waiting for it.
Should I restart?
Yeah, maybe let's restart.
Okay, let me stop and restart.
No rush. We've got time for you. There we go. Perfect.
You have it now.
Yes,
fantastic.
Thank you.
All right. My presentation is strictly on just keeping colleagues up to date as to what has happened post COVID-19. The starting point is CBOA was established in 2005, in November 2005, formally as a cross-border bus operators association, with emphasis on handling matters that were arising at the time due to obviously the complexities of operating into different countries, which is something that operators back then were not used to. So there were so many teething issues at the time, and hence the operators came together to form the association. In 2012, we then changed our name to Coach and Bus Operators Association so that we could also incorporate representing the local operators here in Zimbabwe who were running intercity and rural routes. So CBOA is run by an executive committee of 5 people, a chairperson, vice chairperson, secretary, treasurer, and the CEO, which in this case would be me. All executive committee members are supposed to be bus operators of significant repute. Continuing on with the history of cross-border passenger transportation, I think the main operation in cross-border in SADC has been between Zimbabwe and South Africa. That's where you have the highest level of movement. So the two republics entered into a bilateral road transportation agreement in 1997, which was entered into by the Honorable Ministers Mark Maharaj and Simon Kayamoyo. For those that may need to look at the bilateral agreement, you find it under Schedule E of Proclamation R32 of 98. Prior to this, the operators from the two countries would drop passengers at the respective ports of exit, and the passengers would then cross the bridge on foot into buses on the other side. So in 1998, buses then started crossing into the two countries using extraterritorial route authority permits. The main routes then were Harare and Bulawayo here in Zimbabwe to Johannesburg, which over the last 5 years has obviously increased. There are more cities in Zimbabwe where you can go to, and there are more cities in South Africa where operators can fly to. Over the 2 decades since implementation of the bilateral road transport agreement, the number of travelers, buses, and coaches increased considerably. Critically, though, I have to highlight this. 99% of the passengers between the two countries remain Zimbabwean nationals, those that are carrying Zimbabwean passports. At the beginning, though, travel was almost evenly split between nationals of the two countries. When SARS-CoV-2, now which we popularly refer to as COVID-19, was discovered in 2019, very few of us would have predicted the catastrophic effects it would have both on our health and financial well-being. In March 2020, both Zimbabwe and South African governments placed the citizens under lockdown, initially for 21 days, and all ports of exit and entry were closed, with highly restricted transmission of important personnel. In October 2020, South Africa announced that it was reopening the South African border. However, Zimbabwe did not do so until the 4th of March 2022. In July 2020, we woke up and found several bus companies undertaking what they deemed self-repatriations. Even at association level, we were not engaged. We didn't even know how that started. And unfortunately, it was undertaken by hired buses at the beginning. So the majority of operations did not comply with normal requirements and standards set for the transportation of passengers between the two countries. And these operations were sustained through unscrupulous means, which unfortunately introduced an unsustainable culture, which is predominant now. Secondly, some of the buses and coaches were used as haulage trucks. I'm sure Basil touched on this when he was making the presentation his presentation earlier. Running without passengers sometimes, but with goods only, is what we deem malaichas or malumes. So the several challenges that we are saddled with now, post-COVID-19, is the culture of impunity. So you have bus crews, law enforcement agencies, and the passengers who have undergone a serious transformation and prefer to play a cat and mouse game between themselves. Resultantly, the bus and coach gets impounded and the operator is then saddled with the exorbitant fines, either for carrying people with no passports, smuggling of goods, or both. Influx of illegal bus and coach operations. A large number of the buses and coaches that you see at the moment on our roads do not comply with any requirements as the previous operators were. These operations, in the majority of cases, do not even carry the permit. I'm sure Dr. Mike also alluded to it just now in his presentation. So vehicles are being used more as trucks to carry more luggage than the comparable number of people on the bus. Thirdly, the number of passengers has drastically reduced to about 20% of what we used to carry 3 years ago. At our peak, there were more than 30,000 passengers daily that were being ferried between the two countries. At the moment, the peak in April, we were realizing about 5,000, which is a huge drop. This has negatively affected the operators who thought that with the Zimbabwean side of the border opening, operations would resume accordingly. In effect, we now have an oversupply of buses and coaches by a factor of 4. The reality check for an existing bus operation at the moment. The operation of cross-border buses and coaches will never be the same post-COVID due to the following reasons. All the traders we used to ferry have either liquidated their operations or have found other means of moving their goods which they deem cheaper or rather cost-effective to them. Passengers don't need to be in buses and coaches, as flights, especially pre-booked way in advance, are considerably cheaper and the travel is less hassle for passengers. Anyhow, they know that their goods can still be transported on the buses or on coaches in their absence. Increase in the usage of private cars by people traveling between the two countries. And lastly, operating costs for buses have gone up by a minimum of 50% over the 2 years, worsened by the recent increase in fuel prices. So these are the existing challenges. I also wanted you to have an appreciation of what is happening on the ground. This is the mode of transportation that most people are using so that they don't have to actually jump onto the buses and coaches. So with this sort of movement of goods, you will find that there's always some level of corruption that has to occur to justify the things that happen. I thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Yeah, I think you've just highlighted there, serious reality check indeed, not only from the impacts of COVID-19, but the alarming rise of non-compliance. It's clear, I think, from the thread today that there's lots of collaborative work required and efforts required to get the sector back to the correct status. I think more importantly, associations like yours and ours, we are representative of operators, and I think our voice and our roles are crucial. So yeah, today's base gives us that platform, and I think if we start working more harmoniously together, as we have started to do, there's still lots of work to do. But thank you for your time and contribution, and it's appreciated, and I look forward to continued engagements with ourselves and then within the broader space. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Harry, I think, yeah, we're at that point now. In terms of the Q&A, I'll allow you to coordinate for us there, Harry, and open up the floor. But at that point, I think, Dr. Mike, if you want to come back in with your video and audio, and as well as Alex, and let's see if there's any clarity or any discussion items.
Thank you, Basil. Can I kindly ask Dr. Mike and Alex to both unmute themselves as well, so that we can bring them into the panel.
Like we've done a good job, panelists.
Absolutely.
Of giving the information through. Nobody firing right up ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much for the panelists and Basil for chairing this far. Dr. Mike, you can be assured with Transit Forum's support to the important work the BMA is doing. And we're inviting the audience now to engage with our panelists. Ladies and gents, you can either click on reactions and raise your hand if you want to ask a question, or you can unmute yourself, and once being recognized, you can ask your question. You can direct your question to a member of the panel or to the panel as a whole, and then we'll give the panel opportunity to answer your question. While we're waiting for people to make up their minds, I would like to ask a question, and that is the level of integration between the good work the BMA is doing, for example, towards the other side, for example, the Zimbabwean side. To what level do we think in future this will be integrated and to become, more like a one-stop border post? Dr. Mike, maybe if you can have your opinion on that.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Harry. Thanks, colleagues. What I can assure you is that indeed, you will be aware that on the Zimbabwean side, in terms of the redevelopment of the port itself, Zimbabwe is actually at the advanced stages. We are a bit behind. And I suppose from our side, what had made us to be behind is the fact that we have to, in a way, use a PPP concept, the public-private partnership concept, in the redevelopment of the ports. You'll remember we have 6 of those that have been identified. You probably might have heard the minister talking even publicly about it. So it's going to be Bed Bridge, Lubombo, Maseru Bridge, Fiesbeck, Oshuk, as well as Kofontein. But in this instance, it will be Bed Bridge. So in terms of the redevelopment of Bed Bridge in particular, we are working together with the Zimbabwean colleagues. We are actually even being assisted by a Japanese company called JICA in terms of developing systems as well as the operational protocols that are going to align the operating mechanism between ourselves as well as the Zimbabwean colleagues. So in this instance, it's going to be the development of the port on our side in terms of infrastructure. And that work is, we are busy with the colleagues from the Department of Public Works. And maybe I can also confirm just in this meeting now that you will remember that the infrastructure in our airports is under AXA. The ones at the sea are under a port authority. So infrastructure in our land ports is under DPWI, Public Works. So according to Section 38 of the BMA Act, all that infrastructure will be transferred from the Department of Public Works into BMA. So BMA is going to assume the custodianship of managing the infrastructure at all the ports, all the 53 of them, inclusive of the infrastructure moving in and out together with the residential accommodation. So that work is at advanced stages, but indeed we are working with our counterparts to align our systems to make sure that it becomes seamless indeed. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Mark. Much appreciated. Ladies and gents, yeah, I'm quite sure you have some questions to our panelists. You can raise your hand or unmute and I'll recognize you to ask a question. I've just invited the guys on YouTube also to ask questions should they have questions. Let's give them a second or two. Maybe we can ask Alex in the meantime. Alex, in terms of the corruption and the shift towards the wrong focus there in Zimbabwe, what are the immediate steps you guys are taking to counter this, in terms of goods being transported on buses and stuff like that? Are there focus groups or what are you guys doing to counter this?
Thank you, Harry, for that question. I think what we can do as associations is to engage with government, because unfortunately we do not have, here in Zimbabwe, associations are voluntary organizations of like-minded people. So you find that the majority of operators that are doing whatever they're doing, they don't belong to any association because they don't want to be held accountable by anyone. And the only way to deal with that is for government to then intervene and assist. If I tell you, over the last 3 weeks, the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Agency has been impounding buses specifically for us. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, they've impounded almost 30 buses. And if you are fined the first time, the second time, the bus is actually forfeited to the state. Because they are worried that the culture that is occurring on the ground right now is so dangerous that if it is not dealt with, it may end up creating much more bigger problems than the smuggling of just grocery items. So we're just engaging at the moment, and we're engaging well up to the office of the head of state, just to make sure that everyone does what they're supposed to do.
Yes. Thank you, Alex. And Basil, have you guys noticed the same trend in South Africa, perhaps, from Zimbabwe perspective?
Absolutely, Harry, but there's always a finger-pointing situation, and as to who is the culprit and who isn't the culprit, who's legal and who isn't. I think there's just an exploitation of a current, as Dr. Mike said, state of semi-chaos and the current or the prevailing conditions. But I think I will touch back. This has got to be a collaborative approach. So the associations can help develop the regulatory framework, but we can't be regulators. We are representatives. And I think the resources of the BMA and the agency together and the information supplied from the likes of via myself and Alex and through our associations will help tighten it. But we've got to have almost a formal audit process that says everybody needs to be accounted for. And it takes away this opportunity for even as enforcement agencies to exploit the situation, because the more you allow this, there's some kind of exploitation allowed or developing from enforcement agencies, and they can hide behind their mandates and particular legislative arms. So, Harry, yes, very much prevalent across modes, definitely within the sector. The sector cannot stand back and say, we are clean in this. We've got to fix ourselves up, and that's where as associations we commit to doing it. And then after that, we look to the entities and the authorities to assist us in getting proper status and regulatory framework and compliance. And it might just then also attract back the traveler and the commuter and the passenger to say, I like the way the industry is looking and operating from an experience point of view, from a safety point of view, and from a compliance point of view all around. And we might stimulate growth back in the sector, Harry.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, looking at the BMA presentation, it's so encouraging to see, the span of focus, but also that the commissioner included, the role technology is going to play in future as well. The BMA can't operate with information, proper information, the report generation, management information systems, and so on. Information is crucial in this, and then collaboration and communication, proper communication, boils down from data to information, and that is what the BMA is in need of. So we need to collaborate, rightfully so, as the commissioner said. That's so important. It doesn't seem to me we've got.
Harry, I've got, and maybe Alex can help me here.
Yes.
So the regulations might be different, but in the chat group, Kathy is asking, are the large 12-ton luggage trailers being towed by cross-border bus or coach operators operating within the regulations? And if so, which are these regulations? Sorry, I saw the last part at the end, Kathy.
Maybe let me start, Basil, to answer Kathy. If you have been watching the space, Kathy, over the last decade, the trailers started as normal 2.5, 3-ton trailers, and they kept on growing. Two reasons. The first reason is then at one point, Zimbabwe was dependent even for basic goods on South Africa. Our shops had run out of almost everything. And this is when the size of the trailers grew, because if you wanted to ferry 60 people on the bus and everyone was carrying groceries that would last them 2-3 months, then you would need a full-size trailer. So this is how the trailer started. But of late, we find that the trailers are actually now hauling commercial goods instead of the basic groceries and which is what we had created them for. So in terms of regulations, yes, they comply because the trailers may be big, but in most cases, they are 5-ton trailers. So it just depends who manufactured them. But we are obviously worried about the movement of commercial goods from freight into buses. Thank you.
And just to take that further, I think once we've got ourselves properly set up and structured to sink our teeth into these kind of issues, that will be addressed. And I think it has an element of us collaborating with the RFA in that regard, and then presenting joint data for the likes of Dr. Mike and the agency to take forward. But certainly it's on the radar to look at, to regulate, and not just create another market of a bus becoming a goods vehicle under guise, because it has some serious contraband issues, monitoring issues, SARS, tax implications, declarations, and all the like. But it's on the list of items to get to.
Absolutely. No, thank you very much. Well, let's ask our panelists then for some closing remarks for this half of the session. Maybe we can start with the Commissioner, Dr. Mike, and then we can have Alex, And then Basil, if you can then do some closing remarks for this half, and then we can take a break. Thank you, Dr. Mike.
Yeah, no, thanks, Harry. Yeah, indeed, this has been a very good interaction, and I've noted a very clear and open brief from Alex in terms of the developments, and of course, the issues raised by Basil in terms of the brief, in terms of the challenges. I would say that BMA is coming into the space. One of the objectives is to be able to make sure there is very clarity of purpose in our ports of entry. I can tell you now that the issue you are referring to in terms of buses now being used to ferry fridges, by the way, with people not necessarily going, literally, they actually take fridges, your microphones, your everything, they put them in buses, in the trailers, and then they take them through. So all of those issues are very much serious issues, you know, as you're indicating, Basil, and of course, as Alex is indicating. But if you go to the port in terms of saying, how do we deal with that? There's no any clarity. And that is why the trade actually increases, because there is no clarity whether is it correct or is not correct, or is it legal, it's not legal, and all of that. Yesterday, I had a conversation with the Minister of Transport, Minister Mbalula, together with my Minister Mtoledi, the CBRTA colleagues, including the CEO. And one thing that also came, which is very interesting, is that the issues of the permits in terms of the buses crossing the border as we speak now, it's not even a requirement. And that is why, because it's not a requirement, people then took advantage and start doing this cross-border movement with buses that don't actually have any permit. And Alex is right. Most of those are not even belonging into associations because they don't want to be held accountable. But the reality is, if we allow these things to continue, then they kill the formal trade. I mean, people who are supposed to be doing proper business, who are in associations, who want to be accountable, who are supposed to be doing what is supposed to be legal, they literally get pushed out or pushed back by the people who are doing illegal things. And from a law enforcement point of view, and from a government or a state point of view, if we don't do our job, we are killing other sectors. And in this instance, it will be your sector. And that will be very much unfortunate. So we are in these conversations to make sure that we streamline these issues. We are going to be having very targeted engagement with the CBRTA as we speak to be able to relook into our regulations. That is why I gave that example earlier of the bus that I spoke about. And I think Alex probably know about it. But the point is that particular bus had literally been fined thousands and thousands. And to the extent that they just continue doing it because they knew there are no any implications. I mean, the last time the minister was there, was very much angry. And the reason for that is the driver himself, let alone the list of the passengers, he never had it. And that is one of the requirements, let alone the permit, he never had it. Worst part of it, he never had a passport. Then he's querying people, 90% of them, no passports. Now the question is, what is it that we are doing to ourselves? It cannot be. So from a government point of view, we are failing yourselves who are wanting to actually play in this thing legally and formally. And that is why we are changing the game. You will then start seeing the difference, by the way. Very soon, we will be launching the border guards. And arising from that, we are busy with the integration. 1st of April, you will see a very serious difference. Law enforcement is going to be very much different because the border guards will be on the ground. So I'm just saying, let's continue to engage. And I think, Basil is right. We need to partner with yourselves so that you help us to understand some of the modus operandi, some of the things that some of the people who are actually stifling your space are doing. And then once we know all of those, we are able to make sure that on the ground, people are understanding what they need to do to make sure that we clean the environment. Because if we don't, we are going to have all of these issues. And by the way, the last thing that I want to say, Alex, one of the reasons why there has been a movement of people away from the buses has also been this not synchronization of the COVID requirements. There was a point, by the way, where on the Zimbabwean side, they were saying, if you come back into Zim, you have to then go to quarantine at your own cost. And people literally looked at that and say, how am I going to do that? So what happened is people literally walked away from the ports, and those who really wanted to go home, they went to the borderline. And that is why the interventions at the borderline or the interceptions at the borderline just tripled is because of some of those issues. So there is a need, even for us from government point of view, to synchronize our activities. It wouldn't make sense if South Africa opens for people to travel, but on the other side it's not. Or Zimbabwe opens for people to travel, on our side we close, or we bring some regulations that becomes very much prohibitive. So I'm just saying, all of these things for me, they go back to government and they go back to state and our ability to simplify the environment and make sure that you have a proper environment to operate. Thank you very much. For me, that is my closing remarks. Suffice to say, we'll continue to engage going forward in this particular journey. And I think we should be able to win. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mark. Much appreciated. And thank you for sharing what the BMA is doing to the Transport Forum and SABOA. And we really appreciate, looking forward to been working with you and supporting what you're doing. Thank you so much. Alice.
Thank you very much, Harry. And I can't agree with you more, Dr. Mike, on the things that you have raised. And truthfully, we were also worried with the lack of synchronization, because we immediately saw that there was going to be gaps that the unscrupulous operators would then take up, because the gap was created. And as we all know, it is difficult in an environment with pressure like a busy border post like Beitbridge for corruption not to happen absolutely. There are always going to be bad apples in government, there are bad apples with the private sector, and the things then start flowing from there. I want to promise you from our side that we feel that until such a point that government creates an environment that it is more profitable for a person who's fully compliant to operate, we will continue facing the challenges that we're facing. If we do not change the manner in which we deal with matters at the moment, we will all be eroded. All the enthusiasm that you have, sir, as you start on your journey with the BMA, you will get frustrated if everyone doesn't assist you in the path that you want to take, including ourselves. We are available at any time for you to check on information. Even if there are some government offices here in Zimbabwe that are not responding to you properly, you can call us. We can go and sit in their office and say, you need to talk to the commissioner. He needs to know about what is happening. I'm sure if CBRTA were here, they would confirm the instances where we go to our government and say, why are you not supplying them the information that they require so that they do the job that they need to do? So it is our collective responsibility to protect the passenger transportation sector in the manner in which we want it to be, not what is happening right now. Thank you.
Thank you for that encouraging words, Alice. Really appreciate that. And thank you for your presentation. Basil, your comments on this stage.
Thanks, Harry. And just acknowledging a direct message in the chat group, but I want to extend it further. So it's a collective responsibility, I think. You know, we must avoid the finger pointing and blaming. Let's take collective accountability. And if anybody sees irregular practices, non-compliances, or you have a perception of illegality, irrespective, you know, just always flag it or raise it, send it through to our officers. You've seen our details, same for Alex. And then we'll start flagging together with the agency and the other enforcement processes and Dr. Mike's team as to any growing trends and where hotspots or collective processes need to focus. I think if we do it collectively, we'll make some impact. But overall, I think for this first session, we've seen that compliance, regulatory aspects, and enforcement will all at a point require when Dr. Mike and his team are out of incubation and
and officialized and flying the flag, your work's going to be cut out. But we are here, and I endorse what Alex has said. Together we can, and we look forward to that. And then I think in the next segment, when the agency comes on board, we'll see their commitment as well in terms of supplementing everything we put on the table. But without a doubt, I think, colleagues, this sector needs to have a cleanup. And for a cleanup, you need a good data set that eliminates bad from good, official from unofficial. And we can speak with conviction there from Harry. I think we'll pause at that point. Thank you very much. And thanks to Alex and Dr. Mike for your time as well and contributions. See you later.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Basil and the panelists. We really appreciate your time and spending the time with us this morning and sharing some knowledge. We're looking forward to collaborating with you in future. And ladies and gents, let's now going to take a break. Before that, you can see there's a program. We've got exciting another 2 presentations ahead of us, and still being chaired by our host, the South African Bus Operators Association, Basil Govender. And we will see you back here at 11:30. So let's take a short break. Thank you very much.
Ready when you are, Harry. Are we good to go, Harry? I think you're on mute.
Okay, let's try again. Thank you, Basil. I was talking on my own here. Yeah, we're still busy with the Transport Forum event, proudly hosted by South African Bus Operators Association. And we're talking about cross-border challenges. Thank you, Basil, for hosting this session and chairing this session. You're welcome to introduce our next presenter. Thank you very much.
Just a reminder, folks, the Sabawa event 2022 alongside Future Road Auto Mechanica. You can hit the Sabawa website and or Harry's Transport Forum website. All the links are there to register and get more detail, either the conference, dinner, or exhibitions alike. Welcome back, folks, colleagues. Yeah, next up, we're going to hear from the regulatory body within the sector. The CBRTA, as it's often referenced, is the Cross-Border Road Transport Agency, represented by Mr. Sibulele Diodio. The agency works closely with all stakeholders, and in the last year, we have formalized a relationship between the agency and CBASA. There is an agreement in place that's signed by all parties, but just requires some slight tweaking to remove some original signatories and reconstitute it. So Mr. Diodio is an executive manager for stakeholder relations at the Cross-Border Road Transport Agency, CBRTA, and responsible for facilitating the realization of the free flow of cross-border road transportation of both freight and passengers within the SADC region and beyond. At the agency, Mr. D, as we affectionately reference him, is championing the task of enhancing and strengthening the capacity of the agency and the transport sector in supporting the realization of the objectives of the National Development Plan and other international policy documents of the South African government. A bit about him. Prior to working for the agency, he was head of roads and transport planning at the SALGA, South African Local Government Association. He was responsible for advising, supporting, profiling, and representing organized local government on roads and transport planning matters. Prior to that, he worked for the Department of Transport under the National Transport Master Plan, NatMap 2050 project. And before the Department of Transport, he was a professional planner at the Nelson Mandela Bay Metropolitan Municipality. By trade, Mr. Diodio is a transport engineer and planner with more than 20 years experience in both domestic and international transportation systems. He has extensive experience and expertise in all aspects of transport. He's a registered professional planner with the South African Council for Planners, SACPlan. He's a corporate member of the South African Planning Institute, SAPI, and a member of the Institute of Directors in Southern Africa. He has 2 degrees, a Bachelor of Science Honours degree in Town and Regional Planning from the University of Witwatersrand, Wits, and a Master of Philosophy in Transport Studies at the University of Cape Town. He's a brave man. He's soon going to be registering for a doctorate in development finance with the University of Stellenbosch. So we wish him luck and strength in that. Mr. D, welcome. Thanks for your time and for the agency. Over to you to give us your views via the CBRTA. Welcome.
All right. Thanks, Basil, for that welcoming response, and also thank you to Harry for for this platform of the Transport Forum. Just to say, I was a regular guest, Harry, when I used to work for the South African local government. I used to do a number of presentations in this forum. It's a very good forum for us as a country to engage on. And and thanks again, Basil, for hosting this important session for us to discuss issues around cross-border road transport. And good morning to all the colleagues. I've listened to all the presentations during the morning, and indeed we've got a lot of work cut out for us. Just to indicate, I'm going to try to share the slides.
You can just go to slide view.
Is it showing?
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm a bit under the weather. Just excuse my voice. I'm not feeling well, but I thought it is important for me to honor this appointment. So I'm going to be presenting the role of the agency in the cross-border transport. This is the content of the presentation, but I will present it in less than the allocated time. So don't be alarmed by the content itself. I'm going to try to make it flow in terms of what the expectation of the presentation. So I think let's start with the mandate of the Cross-Border Road Transport Agency, affectionately known as the CBRTA. We are an agency of the Department of Transport, established in terms of the Cross-Border Road Transport Act of 1998 as amended. So we report to the Department of Transport, and our operation commenced in August 1998. We were established in April of 1998, but the actual operations came a bit later. I think as the BMA were incubated by the Department of Transport for about 6 months since our establishment, and then we then came full on. Our vision is to be a leading economic cross-border road transport regulator in the region, and we strive to integrate the African continent through excellent cross-border road transport economic regulation, law enforcement, advisory, and facilitation. So in front of you, you've got the key mandates of the work that we do. I think at the core and the linkages with Dr. in the BMA, we're established to ensure that there's unimpeded flow of cross-border movement across our South African borders. And one of the key functions also is to reduce operational constraints and address corridor bottlenecks in the work that we do. We also got a footprint in the SADC region. We look to ourselves as a thought leader in relation to cross-border road transport issues. We have recently lobbied for the establishment of a cross-border road transport regulators forum, which is a forum of all 12 inland countries within SADC to help and to facilitate and harmonize issues of road transport. So the agency at Focus, we've got 4 functions that we proud ourselves in terms of our act. We are a regulator, so we regulate both passengers and freight, and it's more commercial vehicles. So all private vehicles we don't regulate. So we've got a regulatory function that we set ourselves to do. We in the passenger space, which is the discussion we're having now, we try by all means to manage demand and supply between the numbers that we have from South Africa and to the rest of the SADC region. We also have a facilitation function, which I lead. This facilitation function is intending to ensure that there's harmonization of policies within the region and ensure seamless movement of passengers and freight across our borders. We also have an advisory function. This is the function that is tasked with advising the Minister of Transport regarding your trends and how the region is moving towards issues of cross-border movement. Then the last function is the Road Transport Inspectorate function, which at the moment is being implemented for us by the Road Traffic Management Corporation, RTMC, on an SLA that we have entered between the two agencies under a principal agent relationship. So I think there have been lots of presentations regarding this, but just to recap, the cross-border road transport is inundated with a lot of challenges. Key amongst those is the fragmentation regarding regulatory environment. I know Alex did speak about this, especially around COVID, but I think the issue of fragmented regulatory environment, it also goes over and above the period before COVID. And I think as practitioners in this space, we want to ensure that there's harmonization of standards and a regulatory environment along this region of ours. There's also uncoordinated law enforcement operations, and key to that is also the unharmonized border operating times, even though I think we try by all means to ensure that border times are harmonized in the region. I think there's also a lack of corridor monitoring systems, and I think also very important is the lack of digitalization in the work that we do. And I think we are trying as CBRTA to be a thought leader to see how best we can influence the region insofar as digitalization is concerned. Alec did speak at length in terms of this, and I think Basil also touched on it in terms of his presentation. With those challenges that I've just indicated, as if there were not enough, COVID has also brought its own set of challenges, which relates to issues of unharmonized regulatory environment, especially around the COVID era. And you would have seen that when the whole pandemic started, there were a lot of regulations that countries were passing that were not coordinated. But I think towards the end of 2020, there were guidelines that were developed by SADC, and I think adopted also by the tripartite on how goods and passengers needed to move within the region. So there was a form of harmonization of those standards towards the end. But I think to zoom into the subject of today, which is more bus in nature, we thought it's important just to highlight some of the challenges that the bus industry is inundated with. There's a lot of growing number of illegal operators, and I think Alec indicated that, and I think COVID has also made it worse. There are a lot of buses that come through our borders. In terms of our Cross-Border Road Transport Act and also bilateral agreements that we have between membering states, when an operation needs to be embarked on, the member state, even though they've got authority to issue permits, but they ought to refer those applications to the other authority in the other country. And I think the growing number of these illegal operators as a result of non-referral by member states to South Africa in terms of managing demand and supply. And I think this has caused a lot of challenges in the region. And also the non-adherence of operators to CBRTA and Department of Home Affairs legislation. We were in a meeting yesterday with the Commissioner, the Minister of Transport and Home Affairs, regarding some of the challenges that we see our operators doing and not adhering to Department of Home Affairs legislation. And I think we were tasked by the two ministers to engage and to see how we can better deal with some of these issues. I think there's also been the COVID-19 associated challenges that the bus industry has been exposed to. I think key and very important, and is one of the things that we need to address as the country, is the number of many checkpoints en route to borders. A bus from Park Station going to Bay Bridge, for example, you'd find that it gets stops along the way more than 20 times. Each local municipality en route would want to stop this bus, and in many times they stop them for their own corruption activities. But sometimes they would stop them for enforcing the law, but the challenge with that is we need to find a well-coordinated way of managing law enforcement along the route. Abuse of law enforcement officials, where bus drivers are exposed to a lot of abuse. If the law enforcement officials see a bus pulling a trailer, and they know that it's a cross-border bus and they want to stop it for Injonjo. I think there's also a challenge in terms of the proliferation of new association within the cross-border bus environment. And I think that's how the SABASA, which Basil spoke about, was then realized and is to assist us with ensuring that the cross-border bus industry speak with one voice. I think key to this is also the delays at border posts that is caused by many issues. And I think we're working very hard to ensure how we can deal with some of the issues that would address issues of border delays. So, but just to indicate, we have a stakeholder management plan that we use as the agency to engage the different stakeholders that we have within our value chain. But I think key to the bus engagement platforms, I think Basil did speak about them. We do have regular discussion and engagement with our SIBASA, which is the amalgamated association that Basil spoke about. We also have individual association meetings that we have and interact with our bus operators within the bus industry. Basil did indicate to you that there's SABOA, SACBOA, and CIFA, which are the different associations that we have that we need to interact with them as well. We have also forum meetings where all cross-border bus operators would meet and will discuss issues of mutual concern. And we also do have one-on-one consultation with our bus operators on a needs-be basis where we need to engage with them on those platforms. We've had a discussion with SABASA around some of the challenges that they have, and we had put to them, and I think Basil did present it in his first presentation on some of the industry priorities that the industry would want to embark on for this year. I think we challenged them and to say we want them to indicate to us what is it that they would want to focus on in addressing some of the challenges that we have. He did indicate and present a whole detailed presentation on them, but I think I've sought to summarize some of the priorities that they have submitted and indicated for us, which is the finalization of the MOU between SABASA and CBRTA, and also finalize their draft constitution, as he was saying, I think also very important is how then SABASA is represented within the agency and some of the work that we need to do together. And I think very importantly is issue of the regulatory issues. There are a number of regulatory issues that we ought to engage on, understanding that we're a regulator, but we also need to consult our stakeholders to ensure that our regulation is done appropriately. Then also the border-related issues. I think the BMA is a partner that we all aspire to associate ourselves with. And I think we're looking forward to a good working relationship with the BMA, and I think the industry as well. They've been saying that they would want to have that interaction and discussion with them. I think on the side of CBRTA, our priorities, we have endeavored to try to align some of our priorities with the industry, and I think the last slide will indicate those. But we as CBRTA, we are interested more in ensuring that there's compliance of the industry with the CBRTA legislation and compliance with the Department of Home Affairs legislation and any other legislation that government has promulgated. I think there's too much lawlessness in the industry, generally within the cross-border space, and we need to ensure that we regain our authority insofar as that is concerned. We also want to find means and ways to ensure that we recognize our associations within the cross-border space, and we see how best we can do that. And there's been a big issue in the industry about the leasing of cross-border buses. That is a very big issue that we would want to address and deal with it. I think they've also, SABASA has indicated a need for them to be part of the permit application process in terms of ensuring that illegal operators do not get into the system as it were. And I think we're also looking into how best we deal with some of those challenges that they've indicated to us. Then very key is issue of referrals of cross-border permits to member states, and I think we want to work actively to ensure that is realized. So I think in a nutshell, colleagues, this is the top 5 strategic trust for 2022 that we're going to be focusing on in partnership with SABASA. These are all the areas that the industry has indicated, and also we've linked it up with some of the priorities as agencies that we have had. So we have committed, or we are committing to ensure that we work very closely with SABASA to ensure that the regulatory environment within our operators is in a safe space. There are also other regulatory issues that we need to work on as the CBRTA, as the regulator, for the benefit of the bus associations, and those are indicated here. And I think the border-related issues, we have been actively involved in the conceptualization of the BMA, as the commissioner has indicated. The fact that it started around 2007, I think we've been very involved in the establishment of it, and we continue to want to be part of its formation and the good work that it ought to do. I think lastly is also to ensure and promote compliance, and also ensure that law enforcement challenges are addressed. I think as a parting shot to my presentation, we ought to move towards digitalization as all of us, and ensure that we deal with issues of quality control, and ensure that we all share information amongst member states and among government entities in order to ensure that things are done in the most appropriate way. And the world is moving from quantity regulation to quality regulation, and we need to ensure that we we link ourselves to ensure that we deal with some of these quality regulatory prescripts that we are called to do. So thank you very much for the opportunity, Basil and Harry, and looking forward to the discussion sessions at the end of the other presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. D. Under the weather, and thank you for taking the time to strain yourself and your voice through that process. Much appreciated. Wishing you a speedy recovery there. And I think in an overall sense, it just reaffirms and endorses the kind of a thread that's coming through, albeit we discuss this regularly around regulation, regulatory aspects, enforcement, common theme and challenge. But we have full confidence in you and the team at the CBRTA, and that collectively, with all the stakeholders today and those that didn't get to make it, we can make a difference and achieve that quality control that you signed off with. Thank you. So, all right, colleagues, per the program, next up, we're about to get some insight into the developments at Beitbridge, wherein an upgrade and modernization process was embarked upon and is probably well on its way towards completion or underway towards completion, and we'll hear about that. The presentation is from the representatives of RLBS, and RLBS works with the Zim Borders Consortium, and they are responsible for the Zim Borders Consortium is responsible for the delivery of this project around the upgrade of the Beitbridge border infrastructure. I think represented today, the presenter is going to be Jaco Bakker from RLBS, but his colleague Rowan Morris is also present. And Jaco is the project manager for the technical team that's working on the system implementation of the project. Welcome, Jaco. Welcome, Rowan. And thanks for your time today. And I appreciate it because you had, I think, an on-site meeting as well. So you've managed your time well. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Basil. Rowan, I don't know if you want to say something before I continue into the presentation, or you're happy for me to go straight into it.
Thanks, Jaco, and thanks, Basil, for allowing us to be part of this forum. Just to those who are attending, the participants, we've had quite a lot of engagement with Basil and Alex over the last 4 to 5 months. So we're hoping that we could share all the information with you so that you and your teams and your employees and association members are well prepared. I'm going to hand over to Jaco for the details.
Thank you, Rowan. Let me just share my screen with all of you. Okay, if everyone can confirm if you can see the presentation, then I'll jump straight into it.
Perfect, thank you.
Great. All right, thanks everyone for the opportunity. Like Basil mentioned, this is a project that RLB Systems is part of in terms of a concession with Zim Borders and also a construction company, Raubex. It is the modernization of the Zimbabwean side of the Beitbridge border post. And I want to touch on 3 points going through this presentation, showing you what's going on site and how it can be perceived when buses and coaches go through the border after this upgrade. So I'll give an overview. I'll go through a high level of the expected flow, how buses will flow. Also touch on some technological upgrade points and the fees that will now be applicable to use this new upgraded facilities through the concession. Okay, so a bit of a background and overview. The vision of this upgrade modernization of the Zimbabwean side of the Beitbridge border post is to offer a world-class experience for the border users to increase the volume and efficiency of movement through the border post, and obviously then bring the benefits of increased service levels, less queues, less waiting times, and experience overall for the staff utilizing the new facilities at the border. Okay, so high levels features of this modernization upgrade of the border post is the whole site is being constructed with new buildings, terminal buildings, entry gatehouses, warehouses, parking areas, search bays, luggage scanners for the buses. So it is beautiful buildings. You are welcome to come have a look at site. It feels really refreshed to where it was. Also, part of the upgrade, not only the buildings and the facilities, but also a flow system, which plans to automate the flow of vehicles a bit more. That creates a bit more order. It also brings about a way of first in, first out, where electronically it shows when your vehicle has done all the approvals through agencies, and it pulls up their registration to continue through the site. So the upgrade sections the site into 3 areas. I'll go into a bit more detail as we go on through the slideshow. Just maybe a quick view. So you see, this was the old bike bridge as we all know it or knew it. The facility at the top was where all vehicles has been processed through, being it light vehicles, coaches, buses, freight vehicles. Everyone was basically going through that same building to be processed. With the modernizations and upgrade, it splits traffic into 3 different flow sections, each with their own terminal building, parking areas, surge bays, and warehouse. So at the bottom section, that is for freight vehicles or your heavy commercial vehicles. The middle section that you can see there in the yellow and the red will now be the bus and coach section, exclusively with their own terminal building, own search areas, and own parking lots. And then at the top is for light vehicles and pedestrians, which is phase 3 of the project, which comes after this bus phase. So the freight section was completed in November last year. The bus section in the middle, the construction is completed by the end of this month. It's basically at a stage where the vehicles can use the parking facilities and drive through. The fees are starting the 1st of June. That's when all the agencies will also be moved over into the new terminal building for the users to go straight to that building for processing. This is just a bit of a more detailed drawing on that site. So same explanation as you see, the bottom section for heavy vehicles, the mid section for your buses and mini buses and coaches, and your top section being for your light vehicles and pedestrians. Okay, so this, given the background and overview, I'll give you a view of the expected high-level flow of your buses and coaches through this newly developed site. So as you approach from South Africa over the bridge from Beitbridge, there's a traffic circle entering. That traffic circle is the area where traffic now splits off into their different flows. So for example, your heavy vehicles freight will now split off and use their own section here at the bottom. As you see now, we're only showing the bus section here where they split off and enter through this turning circle. At the second point, there is an entry gate. At that entry gate, the vehicle gets classified whether it's a minibus or midibus or a coach, and he gets printed a border access ticket. That border access ticket is used to electronically approve your vehicle, and it will control the boom gates through the site that controls flow. So we'll go in a bit more detail on the following slides. This is just to show the quick overview of flow. The parking area at 3 for buses northbound. It is a parking area that caters for about 40 or 50 parkings. Then from this parking area, a vehicle or a driver and his passengers will get out, move through the terminal vehicle, which is there at point 4, where they will do all the in-terminal approvals, such as immigration, customs, your bridge fees, you know, the normalities. And at every of these points, the ticket that was received at the entry will be handed to the agency, which is electronically scanned and approved after their process. There's also a ticketing office, or I want to say a payment station inside the terminal building, where if a user didn't pay at the gate, so at the gates we normally do not allow cash, it will be cards or a voucher. And in the terminal, that's where cash payments can be done, and also reprints of tickets and so forth. At point 6, it's a bus search area, which you can see have 1 to 3 search bays. X-ray luggage scanners is supplied on each of those search bays to just speed up the search of luggage and anything that needs to be searched by customs. Out of there, at point 7 is the exit gate, then going into Zimbabwe. Southbound, the same procedure. At 2, entry gate where you receive your ticket. The parking area at 3, your parking exit at 5, your search bay at 6, and your exit gate at 7. So if I go into that flow a bit more detailed, if we look at the vehicle approaching the border post, you can see at point 1, then utilizing the entry as mentioned. At 2, it's just explaining in a bit more detail that you'll get a QR coded coupon when you enter, and it's handed to the driver. The entry boom opens. This is an example of the ticket. Just says the ticket scanned at every boom gate or checkpoint, and also at every agency to give that approval, which will then allow the vehicle to process through the border post based on those approvals. So then from the parking area, a person goes to the terminal building. This is basically a repeat of the high level, just in more detail. You know, you get your ticket scanned at all your relevant agencies, you do your payment. This is an example of the freight terminal building, which is currently existing, and obviously now the bus terminal is also up. It is a duplicate of the freight terminal, so this is what you can expect from the 1st of June when your people gets processed through this new terminal building. Then when you get out of the terminal building and you've got all of your approvals electronically through the agencies, your vehicle gets called out on an electronic LED screen that's overlooking this parking area. And on that LED screen, if your registration is there, you can proceed. The agencies can also assist by scanning your ticket and telling you still have for example, a customs approval outstanding or immigration's approval outstanding. Based on those approvals, you scan your ticket, then at the exit gate, and the boom will open for you to continue. So this is also an example of what is present. The bus section similarly has these LED screens calling out your vehicle registration number if your vehicle is ready to leave, which means you can proceed, scan your ticket, and the boom will open for your vehicle to proceed. From the parking area, if you've left there, this is the bus search area. In the bus search area, this is where customs will process your vehicle. They will give you an approval if everything was fine on the vehicle, which means you can proceed and scan your ticket at the inspection exit boom, which will let you proceed to the exit. There's also a bus warehouse just to the bottom of this picture, which is this blue building. They've attached it to this parking area where someone from search can refer you to go to the warehouse, where a bus can offload whatever is required, and you get an approval from the warehouse to continue, and the boom will open for you. From that warehouse, you continue to the exit gate, and that is basically just the last man check. It is manned by immigrations, and they will do the approval and the vehicle exits. It is normally at the exit gates, all the approvals can be checked on the ticket. So they scan that ticket electronically. It shows the status that everything's approved, and they open for the vehicle to leave. Okay, so that's a background on the systems and the upgrade of the facilities. Then the use of the border post through the concession comes with a border access toll fee to use these facilities. The fees are structured in a way that the foreign registered vehicles can pay in US dollar, only in US dollar, and your Zimbabwean registered vehicles can pay in either US dollar, ZWL, or rands. Your payment types is cash within the terminal building, credit card or Visa, either at the gatehouse or in the terminal building. Prepaid voucher, only available for Visa and MasterCard at the 1st of June. Through a portal, a prepayment portal of Zimborders. That can be communicated. At this stage, it is an early development of the prepaid portal. So it will only start coming into action from the 1st of June, along with all the other payment types like your cash and credit cards and so forth. And the relevant fees for using this new bus facilities is your mini or midi buses, meaning a vehicle of the carrying capacity or seating accommodation of not less than 8, but not more than 35, is $40. And a vehicle with the carrying capacity or seating accommodation of more than 35 passengers, which is your coaches, is the fee of $80. So in a nutshell, the concession, which is Zimborders, asks this fee for a vehicle to use the facilities and to be processed through this new border post cycle. And obviously their concession then, it's the way how they pay back for the upgrades on the border post. So I think in a nutshell, the upgrades at this stage on the bus facilities, it's at a stage where the agencies are busy occupying the buildings. The 1st of June, the fee starts, which means your drivers will start getting that electronic ticket at the entries and will need to pay for using the facilities, and they can be processed through the border. So yeah, I think that's it in a nutshell. And we've seen the benefits on the freight side. The site is flowing, and it's just another world. I think you'll have to see it with your own eyes to see the feel and the look around site. But yeah, thank you for the opportunity, and I think that's in a nutshell.
Thank you, Jaco, and to Rowan for also facilitating for us. Much appreciated. I think, and also to Zimborders as well for sharing with us. It's a clear indication that of what is possible with the correct will and support and drive to modernize. And obviously the technology sitting alongside within and on top of this is a key to success. And we look to hear as it is implemented. Good luck for 1 June. We hope that it sticks to that timeline, as you've been with the other timelines. And if anything changes there, please do let us know. But thank you for your time again today.
Thank you very much.
So I think, Harry, that brings us to part 2 of the Q&A. So if you just stay online there and video on Jaco, because there might be some questions, and I think there's one already.
Sure.
And Mr. D, if you can come back with audio and video in case there's a question for yourself. And at the end, we'll give you a chance to maybe just make some closing remarks. So I'm going to pick up straight from what's in the chat function there, Jaco. I'm not sure if you've seen it. It says from Hannes, what is the approach to a one-stop border post when you enter and exit countries? I'm not sure if this is positioned with you specifically, but maybe if Dr. Mike's with us, he can also chip in at a later point, because the whole OSBP concept is within itself has got multi-dimensional facets as to what model is chosen for implementation. But any comment from yourself there on that question?
Right. Thanks, Basil. So the one-stop border post, I know there's still discussions, obviously, on the South African side to become part of this modernization or upgrade. The facilities that was built on the Beitbridge border post site, all the facilities were built with the OSBP in mind, meaning that the building can be split off 100% to have a immigration and immigration side, I want to almost say. So you can split it off to a Zim and SA side, if so approved that the South African government buys into that. However, I do not have any further information on how far that process is of the buy-in on the South African side on the OSBP.
So just unmute.
Thanks, Jaco. I'll just pose the next question to you. Mr. D, will you think about, whilst Jaco is answering this question, if you can shed any light as to the actual regulation or any subset of regulations that govern the trailer, luggage trailer, or the pulling of trailers per se, in terms of dimensions and specifications? I couldn't offhand answer. That's come up 3 times today, and I think we need some clarity. But whilst you think about that, if you can and do have access, Jaco, Zama asked that the warehouse for inspection, does it have adequate space for more than 2 buses, or is there holding space for passenger modes that do not meet compliance standards?
So at the warehouse, there is, let me just get my plan open here. There is 3 bays, which means not 3 parking spots. It means that on each side of that bay just have the X-ray scanner in the middle of it. On each side of that X-ray scanner, there is entries. I actually just need to confirm with the actual construction guys exactly the amount. But if I look at this drawing now, it can accommodate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 vehicles at those inspection bays with a trailer. The length of that parking spot caters for a bus and a trailer. So
how many bays did you say?
So on each side of this, how can I say, offloading areas, which is about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, it looks like six areas where a bus with a trailer can fit in. And then the area was extended at the bottom for if there's a vehicle with an issue or problem, they move away from that inspection bay and they park to the side, closer to the warehouse at the bottom. So 6 bays initially for physical inspection. And then I just need to confirm at the bottom what space there would be for vehicles that needs to park and settle goods.
Thank you. I hope that covers you there. Mr. D, any thought at this point or top of your head in terms of the regulations around luggage trailers and restrictions and or allowables there?
No, it's fine. I think it's something that will revert back to yourself regarding that. I think just bear in mind the issue of the trailers would be provided for in the domestic legislation, and it will also be provided in a SADC standard or harmonization. So there's nothing currently within the SADC protocol on the dimensions of the trailer, but I think it's something that we'll look into and we'll provide feedback. So I can't answer from the top of my head right away. Sure, thanks.
So colleagues, here we got our first issue to call for a reconvening in the next round. At least we have something that we can come back to with, well, actually 2, well, make it 3 with the BMA update and Jaco's team if there's anything further, and then this specific piece of legislation. Harry, I don't see anything else. You got any hands or?
Basil, no, I don't see. There's also no questions on YouTube. There are other people on YouTube, but no questions from their side. Okay, Dr. Mike want to say something. Thank you, Dr. Mike.
Yeah, no, thanks, Basil, and of course, thanks to the colleagues for the presentation. I just wanted to reflect a bit on the question raised in the chat around the issue of the, that's the question raised by Hannes, in terms of how the one-stop border post is supposed to be working practically. So what it basically means, I mean, as Jaco has presented, is that the redevelopment of the border post, we had consciously taken a decision that we shouldn't completely merge it with the issue of the one-stop border post, because they are 2 different things. However, we then had agreed that what needs to happen is, as the developments are taking place, they need then to consider the OSBP in the longer term, in their mind in doing that. And what does it mean practically? So there are various models in terms of how you can implement a one-stop border post. So the one that is going to be implemented for Beitbridge in particular is the juxtaposed model, which basically means that Zimbabwe will have their building as they have now, as Jaco has just given the update. We will also have the development on our side as South Africa. So practically what it will mean is the Zimbabweans will then leave. In other words, one team of the Zimbabweans will leave their side, come and co-locate with us in South Africa. And team of South Africans will leave and co-locate with the Zimbabweans that side. What it will mean is, if somebody comes from South Africa going to Zimbabwe, those people are going to be cleared to exit South Africa and also cleared to enter Zimbabwe in the South African building by the Zimbabweans and by South Africans, which means when they finish there, they just drive through into Zimbabwe. They don't have to stop on the Zimbabwean side. And similarly, when somebody's from Zimbabwe coming to South Africa, they will then be cleared to exit Zimbabwe and be cleared to enter South Africa on the Zimbabwean side. And then they just drive in South Africa without stopping on the South African building. So that is basically the juxtaposed model that will be deploying there. But one other model we will deploy, for example, with in Maseru Bridge, based on the discussions we have with Lesotho, for instance. We are going to then not have 2 buildings in various countries, but 1 building. on the South African side. And the Basotho will then co-locate with us. We will then use that building to exit South Africa and enter into Lesotho and do the same. Exit Lesotho and enter South Africa from one building, which is on the South African side. So there are those models that are to be used, but they mainly depend on the engagements we have with the respective countries. The only challenge with the model that we could use with Lesotho, for instance, is if there is going to be a bilateral challenge, and therefore there are issues between the two countries, then there will be a bigger issue because Lesotho won't have a building to be able to complement the process. So that is basically how the issues is. But the latest around the issue of OSBP is on the South African side, the policy has been approved by cabinet. And then in the current financial year, we are starting with the legislative process because this should be legislated. Each and every country will have to have a law governing the OSBP because you will have, lack of a better word, foreign nationals working in another country. And that needs to be regulated by law because they don't have to have their passport stamped and things, but they will be located in a foreign country. That is why there has to be a legislation for that. So I thought Basil and Harry wanted to just give that a bit of clarity in terms of what has been asked in the chat. Thanks, colleagues.
Thanks, Dr. Mike. Before you run away there, just on the OSBP legislative process, the minister did have a session where we were all invited and did some submissions and presentations. Do you foresee a public participation process when that legislative process kicks in, or is this now into implementation mode?
No, Basil. Remember, the legislative process in South Africa is fairly a parliamentary process. And then once we enter a parliamentary process, there is a very fully fledged public consultation process that Parliament will run through the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs. So there will be that. But what you are talking about was the policy process that was undertaken by government, driven by cabinet, led by the Minister of Home Affairs. So still, even on that policy, there was consultation process. There has been some public engagements around it. We have been into NEDLEC, wherein all the social partners were engaged on. They gave their own views in terms of the policy position. So the policy is done. But then moving into the legislative process is then a parliamentary process, which will also have another bite of the public consultations. So there will still be those consultations that you will still have a bite on. And by the way, in Lubombo, as we speak with Mozambique, we are partially implementing a one-stop border post, although not a fully fledged one. Those that are aware, they will know there is Kilometer 7 in South Africa, where we are implementing it, and Kilometer 4 in Mozambique, where we are implementing it in terms of cargo movement. So that is a place where we are doing some kind of a dry run to be able to pick up in instances where there might be some challenges around the concept. But even in terms of the consultation, Basil, that has taken place, there is no any necessarily pushback or different ideas, because it is a model that is used, by the way, in other advanced, I would say, democracies out there, and is working very well. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Mike. Jaco, last one for you around the ticket. I would imagine user-friendly is a given, but the question asked, is the ticket user-friendly? You did have a concept design or a picture of it in your presentation.
Yeah. So I'll try and explain how I understand user-friendly. And please notify me if I'm wrong. But okay, so the ticket that you saw there, it's basically showing your vehicle class on the ticket. It shows your access fee paid, and then it has a QR code. Obviously, it needed to be up to the standards of Zimbabwe Revenue Agency, giving their fiscalization code on it and everything like that. But the user, doesn't have to bother him with all of that information. The only thing he needs to bother himself with that he bought the right ticket for his vehicle. The information is everything in that QR code, and basically he just hands that ticket to the operator, which they scan on a device, and all the information pulls through. There's even information screens in the terminal tablets, which at the back they can scan their ticket and they can check their status. So they can check, is my approval on for immigrations or customs or whatsoever. So it is very user friendly in terms of, you know, scanning it or giving it to an agent. Also at the gates, there's QR scanners, and it's only of aligning that QR code with that scanner at the gate, and it picks it up directly, and the gate will open for the user. Like I said, we've been utilizing it on the freight section, and it has been working well there.
So Jaco, I think, without being a doomsayer, what happens when there's no, what is your equivalent of ESCOM? What happens when there's no power? Do you have the backups? Does it still run electronically, or do you have a fail-safe fallback to manual mode? Or
yes, 100%. So obviously we've been running the freight section from October, and yes, there is stuff that happens, like a power cut on the border or anything like that. We have a full team on site in a control center. And usually in these situations, we have our business continuity plan, which is in contact with all the government agencies. So in a situation which does not happen oftenly, because the power has been vastly improved on site with backup generators. It's only if the power's off and the backup generators are off, then we sit with such an issue. We open the booms, there's a manual process of checking the papers, and those vehicles can proceed out of the border.
Mr. D, you want to help me out on this one? Not often I get stumped by a question, but it says, or an inquiry, how does the triple TFP fit into the strategy of harmonization? And it would appear that RTMS was proposed within a common non-technical standard for compliance. Any comment on that, or is that something we'd have to maybe refresh and come back to the forum? It's in the chat group as an inquiry.
All right. The triple TFP program is a transportation response to the tripartite free trade area agreement. So with Africa wanting to trade with itself more, there are a number of strategies that have been developed and implemented to ensure that that vision is realized. So the Africa Continent Free Trade Area proposes that we need to trade more with each other, and they've set a goal of 51% intra-Africa trade by the end of this year. It's a very tall order task, and I don't think we'll be able to attain it. Currently, we are trading amongst ourselves, depending on which document you read, between 12% and 18%. So the SADC, COMESA, and EAC have then developed a tripartite free trade area to also help in terms of the vision of Africa 2063, of the Africa we want. So the triple TFP program is a program to ensure that we need to ensure that trade does happen between the three regions. I think we all understand that without transport, there can never be trade, and that transport is the heartbeat of any social economic development. So the program of the triple TFP is to ensure that there is harmonized standards and regulations across the three regions to ensure that we harmonize your vehicle load management and ensure that at any given point, what will be the accepted axle load for any given vehicle. and also to harmonize issues of cross-border road transport, so that a vehicle, when it leaves South Africa all the way to Kenya, it's not expected or there is no hindrance in its journey because of different regulations and legislation in terms of it going about its trade. So in a nutshell, the TTTFP is the harmonization vehicle for us to receive or to realize harmonization of legislation, statutory instruments within the region. Thanks, Basil.
Thanks, Mr. D. And on that second part, I think going forward between the agency and ourselves and the sector broadly, we need to see how we can introduce and promote the RTMS standards, towards an industry norm. It's been well received and widely implemented within the freight sector, but it's got a hiccupy start on the bus and coach sector. But I think something that all stakeholders can actively promote towards and getting it adopted in the bus sector. Thanks, Mr. D. Excuse me, Alex, I'll bring you in now. Excuse me.
Thank you.
And whilst you're thinking about that, Alex, let me give you a red herring. Reading live off the news. From Tuesday, Zimbabwean importers won't pay duties on a range of imported basic goods, including rice, cooking oil, sugar, maize meal, milk powder, and soap for the 6 months coming to combat the high inflation rate. So are you going to tell me that we'll see more trailers on the road in the coming weeks?
Not really. I don't think it will make any substantial difference as to. I think the desire was for people to be able to buy comparably cheaper goods from South Africa, but the quantities won't make a difference in terms of the size of the trailers that are being run. Firstly. Secondly, I don't think the operators have money to buy new trailers, bigger trailers, than what they're running at the moment. So that will give us breathing space until we can coordinate the operations properly.
Sorry for railroading you. You wanted to come in with a comment.
That's fine, Basil. I have a comment for Mr. D, and I wanted him to tell me what the thinking is at the moment. Every year, the two countries would come together under the auspices of CBRTA and the Ministry of Transport here, RIMT, to have a discussion with the stakeholders as to what is happening on the ground operationally and things that need to be corrected. Those bilateral meetings have not happened since 2019. Since 2018, I stand to be corrected. Obviously, I understand there was COVID, but it would not stop us from having an online meeting where we say to the operators, guys, we have this problem as law enforcement agencies, and the operators then say, government, we have this problem. What is the thinking in us not having those meetings? Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Mr. D?
No, I think it's something that we need to pick up. Alec, I think COVID had played a role in relation to us not meeting. I think you realize that up until recent, passenger movement was not allowed to Zim. I think it was only approved or allowed as of March this year. We've been having discussions and engagements at a bilateral level with officials in Zimbabwe regarding some of the challenges within the cross-border space. So there has been a number of discussions amongst ourselves, but I think now that the cross-border movement has been open, I think we'll endeavor to set up something before the end of this year, so that we take stock of what has been going on and how we can improve on some of the challenges. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. D. Thanks, Alex. I think, Harry, I don't see any more. Anything on YouTube before we take a wrap?
As well, no, nothing on YouTube. I think what we can do is we can wrap. We can ask closing comments from our panelists, and we're talking about Sibulele Duyu and Yaku. And then we're going to ask Basil, our host, to close the session for us. From the Transport Forum side, I would like to thank all our panelists and Sabawa for hosting this event, and we really appreciate it. And let me just fix things here.
He's offering us free flights there, Harry.
Yeah.
Mr.
Anyway,
Lukman.
Thank you very much, everybody, for supporting the Transport Forum. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Sabawa, for hosting the event. And let's have some closing comments from Sibulele, then from Yaku, and then Basil kindly closing the meeting for us. Thank you very much. Sibulele.
All right, no, thank you, Harry, and thank you for the opportunity to host us, and also thank you to Basil for this session. No, I think there's a lot of things that we need to do together, and I think it's important that we engage in a more structured way to ensure that we deal with most challenges that we have. We've got a number of challenges within the cross-border road transport space, and I think together as a collective, we should be able to address some of those issues. And I think one of the key important solutions to the challenges that we have is to move towards digitalization. So, for example, we've instituted an online payment application system, and we are lobbying our member states to move towards the same route, so that we can share information easily, and we can also pick up on the road if a vehicle is properly licensed or not. Because at the moment, the only thing that we rely on is when we have joint law enforcement activities with our neighboring countries, where we'll be able to pick up those fraudulent permits en route, but also we also rely on us calling them directly if there are challenges. But if we would move on to a digital space, it's possible for us to view that information without necessarily changing it. So I think the future is digital. We are in the fourth industrial revolution, and as such, transport needs to move towards that. I know there was a question of the RTMS. I think the RTMS is a more of a self-regulatory tool within the freight industry that the industry has done. But linked to that, there's a tool that we're currently busy with, which is the Operator Compliance Accreditation Scheme, which will be a tool that we will use to accredit cross-border operators within our space. And depending on the accreditation that you would get, similar to the AEO process of customs under SARS, you'll be able to be given green lanes at the border post, and you won't be stopped. And I think it calls for more interaction and discussions with ourselves and the BMA in terms of the infrastructure that is going to be built there, so that we do provide for green lanes, and that operators who are fully compliant do not have to stop. But thank you for this platform, and I think there's more work that we need to do, and I think we must keep on and carry on with the good work to ensure that we get to the desired goals. Thank you very much, Basil.
Thank you, Mr. D. Jaco, a roundup from your side.
Great. Just thanks everyone for the opportunity. Thanks through Roanne. I think we're looking forward to the users using the new facilities from the 1st of June. We hope that it will assist with throughput of the vehicles. I can assure you that Zim Borders #1 priority is throughput of vehicles through the border post. And yeah, we look forward to that. We will keep communication, if anything, in the use and through the use of the border. I know Roanne communicates usually with you, Basil, to send communication through. But yeah, I think we're looking forward. I'm literally sitting here at the border post, pushing the last bit to go live. So yeah, looking forward, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, and good luck with that.
Thank you.
Then, folks, I think all that's left is for me to try my bit of luck. There you have it. Harry, I'm hijacking your platform. Just to have a last word in, folks, Sabah Conference, Gala Dinner and Exhibition. If you get through here, I'm giving you a live action update on the Sabah landing page. You click on that. It takes you with a couple of options. And if you do further, if you want to exhibit or register for the dinner or the conference, for example, you would click there and it would give you the full, as it stands, the program is being, it's agile. We're waiting on our erstwhile Minister of Transport to confirm. Please visit the website or alternatively through Transport Forum, and you can choose one of those options to register and attend. Registration is essential for that. But in wrapping up, excuse me, Harry, thank you again for allowing us to host on your superb platform. And we hope it was of value to everybody and to the stakeholders. To the panelists, Dr. Mike, it was exciting to engage with you and meet you officially, and it's a start of a long-term relationship. Thank you for your time, as well as Alex from Zimbabwe, who demonstrated that borders matter none, except if it's a one-stop border post. And thanks for your contributions, Alex, as well as to Jaco and his team, and Mr. D taking time out under the weather to assist us. Well, wishing everybody, and be safe and take care until the next round. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers,